Welcome, guys, to the very first episode of Humans of Creative podcast series. I'm Dillan Leslie-Rowe, Managing Partner of Australia, joined by my partner in crime, Chris Morrow, Managing Director of Digitalent. How you doing, buddy?
Very well, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, really good, buddy. Really good. So every month, we are going to be interviewing some of the most interesting leaders across the innovation and design space. Digging deep pretty much into their lives, their ups and downs, what journeys they've taken to kind of get them to where they are currently today. I think for us, I mean, we've talked about this quite a lot. If we're expecting these types of people to kind of divulge their lives and their experiences to us, we want to do the same thing. So today, Chris is going to be interviewing me on my life from start to finish. It's been quite an interesting task. I mean, I think it was the same for you when we spoke a few weeks ago, just to actually think about your life and what you've done during that time. And for me, it was a great exercise to actually look back and think about, shit, oh my God, I mean, I actually did that or did that. And that was just such a crazy thing in my time, stuff that I've completely forgotten about and something you actually look back now and really kind of appreciate. I think yes, this is a similar thing for you, I think, when we went over your podcast.
Yeah, I think we were just saying earlier, I suppose it's not a normal thing to stop and pause and reflect on every single detail that's happened in your life and sort of some of the moments. You're always kind of just moving on to the next thing. And like you said, you forget half of the things that have happened in your life. So to actually sit down and write some of it down and document it, it's an interesting exercise to go through. There's a book in there somewhere, I think, for sure.
100%. I mean, just looking back, I mean, I had a great childhood, had a great upbringing. I was just saying to you earlier, and it's actually great to kind of look back at that time and appreciate kind of what I had and what I've gone through. So it's going to be a great little chat to tell you about my life, Chris, because there's probably quite a lot you don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this isn't something we've ever talked about
No.
in detail over the years, all the years that we've known each other. So yeah, I'm super excited to sort of like learn more about your life and how you got here. So we'll start at the start then, or even before the
right
before the start,
right at the beginning.
Yeah. So you were obviously born in 82.
I was born in 82. Yeah,
myself. You're just like a month younger.
Yeah, month's difference. Yeah, literally a month.
I'm August the 19th. You're September the 19th.
Yeah. So born in Islington, London.
So hang on. So you're born in London. But tell me about like your parents. Where they? Like, how did they meet each other? How did that happen?
Yeah, so they probably met, I think, just over a year before I was born. So pretty soon.
Straight in, no messing around.
Straight in, no messing around. I mean, look, I was 100% a mistake. I mean, 100%. There's no doubt about it. My dad's told me, my mum's agreed. But a great mistake, obviously. My mum back in probably 81, she was a knitwear designer. She had a stall, a market stall in Covent Garden Market in London. Where she sold knitwear. She used to knit it all herself, but when she started kind of upscaling a bit, things just took so long. So she got a load of knitters in to help her. So she built a business from there. As you know, probably Covent Garden is quite a cool little place to be.
Beautiful place. I was just going to say it's like one of the nicest places in London. Really, it's one of my favourite places to go in London for sure.
I mean, she had a great little stall there. I mean, she did really well, actually. She had Hugh Grant come and buy a jumper from her. a few other Americans. Like, oh my God, this is better than Ralph Lauren. Honestly,
is that your American accent?
Remember Timmy Mallet as a
kid?
Yeah.
Mallet,
a jumper off her, and quite a few famous people actually back in the day. And lo and behold, my dad obviously cruised through Covent Garden Market, saw the stall, saw my mum, and was like, "Oh God, look at that!"
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me that he went over and just started having a bit of small talk with her, chatting away, and felt compelled to buy a jumper, about £110 at the time, which is actually quite expensive if you think about it. Early
That's
80s.
A lot of money in 1981. That is a lot of dough in 1981, mate.
My dad's there thinking, shit, I actually haven't got the dough for this, but this girl looks good, so I'm going to buy a jumper.
I need to look good. I need to look good in her.
So he came away with a jumper and no money left. And my mum always tells me that he returned a week later with a pair of roller skates and was like, do you want to come to a roller disco with me this Friday?
Smooth.
My mum, smooth. Ivor was my dad, Pip for my mum. And my mum was an avid skater, luckily enough. And she was like, yeah, let's go for it. And then the magic happened from there. A year later.
So what was your dad?
Your
dad was obviously living in London at that time. Is your dad from London? Or?
Yeah, my dad's from London, Enfield, North London. My dad was working for my granddad at the time. My granddad owned a company that built dials for cockpits for fighter planes. So he worked in the factory there with my dad. I think he was getting a bit tired of it, working with his old pops, and ultimately moved in with my mum, literally within a few months.
Wow.
A few months later, my mum was pregnant, and my mum tells me this all the time. I think I was conceived in a cornfield. My mum was a slight hippie. So it could be some kind of equivalent to Woodstock or something like that. Some festival they'd gone to.
Cornfield.
And, a year and a half later, I'm at my mum and dad's wedding. I just remember seeing photos of my mum holding me in her arms at the altar with my sister in her stomach, ready to go for a second. Yeah.
Amazing. So your dad's from London, and then he's obviously gone to Covent Garden because he's like shopping or whatever. He's just like sort of cruising through there.
I have no idea. He's never told me why. I think he was just cruising around London, probably trying to pick up girls.
Awesome. And then how soon after they met? I would have been. Well,
I would have been conceived probably 6 months after they met. She became pregnant. Yeah, that's quick. Yeah. My mum's told me a few times that my dad's dad. They were obviously introduced quite early because she was pregnant, and obviously back in the day, then he took my mum aside and said, "You do realise you're going to have to marry Ivor."
Really? Why? Because he was very old school.
He wasn't a hugely old school guy, but he was still like, okay, you're pregnant. You haven't been together long, but I think it'd be a good idea if you two married. Yeah. And my mum was at the time thinking, shit, I've not even thought about this.
Yeah.
And I think he probably had the same conversation with my dad.
1981. 82. It's not like it's not really taboo, is it? To have
it's that middle ground. It's probably that transition from being it taboo from the early 70s through to the 18s, and things were becoming a bit more kind of radical in that sense. Free love. Yeah. So so I think probably a year later they would have got married, and I think it took some persuading from my dad.
You actually attended your parents.
I attended, yeah. Oh, some great photos,
for our kids, they'll be the
Yeah.
same. They'll be in
I think
attendance.
that's the norm. It's the norm these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean,
so I think at that time, probably 6 months after I was born, we kind of bought our family house, which was in Muswell Hill, North London.
Muswell
Hill, backed onto Alexandra Palace, which is now actually just a large exhibition kind of centre. But back then was the tower on top was where they did the very first transition for television. That's where they projected the signal from.
right.
Globally and across the UK. So quite an interesting story there. And later on, probably when I was around 6-7 years old, they built an ice rink in there,
Right.
which completely changed my life. So that kind of transition from, seeing my parents fly around on their 4-wheel kind of roller skates.
Yeah. Were they still? Did they still do? Were they still like quite avid skaters and stuff like that? Or
Well, I wouldn't say avid, but they both had a pair of skates that I could see on the top shelf. I was like, I want a pair of those.
yeah.
You know, when you're a kid and you're like, oh, I want that. You want whatever your parents want.
Cool.
So, the ice rink kind of got built just behind our house, and my next door neighbor actually kind of knocked on my door. We had a couple of friends either side, really good friends, boys and girls kind of our age, so we had a really good kind of community on our street. He kind of knocked on my door and said, look, I'm going to go ice skating tomorrow. They just built an ice rink. Do you fancy it? And I was like, Dad, yeah, please take me. So 8 years old, my dad took me up there, and that was it for me. I mean, I just
how far away
was
was the skate rink like from your house?
I could jump over my back garden, and it was through a small park, and it was there. It was literally I could see the building from my house. So for me, I mean, that was absolutely amazing. I mean, I just had my hockey kit, just used to run over there. I used to train kind of three times a week with the team. We were called the Haringey Bulldogs, because Haringey was the borough of London we lived in.
Did you start ice skating as in like ice hockey pretty quickly after? Like
I
after
reckon probably about 6 months from starting to actually ice skate.
Amazing.
Obviously, the kit cost quite a lot. So my dad first got me a pair of skates, then he followed. Obviously, I had to have a stick, and then I got some gloves. So at first, I'm just skating around with gloves and a stick and just some skates, so you get a puck in the shin, or it's like, oh. And gradually, I mean, we weren't. I mean, obviously, it was a difficult time in London around the 80s. I mean, Margaret Thatcher in power, and the slight depression, the economic struggles. I mean, my parents weren't wealthy at all in any way. However, we lived in a nice area in London. It wasn't classed as a nice area there, but I mean now, I mean you wouldn't be able to buy a house for less than 2-3 mil. But I think I remember at the time my parents bought it for £50,000, £4-bedroom house. And it's crazy. And I mean, my next door neighbor had all the kit, they had money, and I'm like, Dad, I want some pads so I can actually play hockey properly. So I'm just remember mum and dad.
Your next door neighbor, was that person like one of your best friends who kind of got you into it at the time then?
Yeah, because I mean, all I really knew as kids, just people on my street really at that age. And there was actually quite a good community of families down there. So yeah, we became very good, close friends with our next door neighbours on both sides. There was 2 boys on one side who started playing ice hockey, and there was a girl and a boy on the other. So we had a good little team. And I started because he did, and he was that family. You know, there's always that family has the best bike, has the best pair of roller skates, has the best skate electrics or whatever. And you go to your parents, you're like, oh, please, Mum, please, Dad, can I get something like that? And my mum and dad were so great. I mean, they did their best to kind of give us everything that we wanted. But we'd always get the kind of the second grade down version. It wouldn't be the best bike. It wouldn't be the best skateboard, but they'd managed to somehow kind of get us.
was your mum's business still going at this point? I mean, what was
Yeah.
the
I mean,
family
my mum's business went for probably until we were 10, no, probably 13, 14 years old, actually.
right?
My dad finished work with his dad, probably within a year or two of meeting my mum, and then began to help my mum with the business. So they actually worked together on the market.
Right.
So
it was
my
always
dad
the
kind of
market
helped.
stall. Never really did it progress into like a shop or anything like that, or was it always on Covent Garden Market?
Always Covent Garden. When we were in London, it was always Covent Garden. They branched out when we moved out of London. That was later on. But yeah, they were a team. Supported each other, pretty much the whole time they were together, really. And I mean, they've worked together since I was born, which has been quite amazing. My dad's done all sorts kind of in between that. I mean, they always wanted to work for themselves. They never wanted to work for someone else. However, I mean, they kind of said to me as I was growing up, don't work for yourself. It's long hours. It's long hours. You don't make any money. Get a proper job. Just get a 9 to 5.
I was going to ask you if that's where you think your entrepreneurial tendencies come from.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does. I mean, I grew up thinking, I always grew up thinking, I'm going to have my own business. I'll be a millionaire by 25. didn't know what I was going to be doing. And always thought, I'm going to have $1 million by 25. And obviously 25 comes and you're like, shit, what's going on? I haven't got $1 million yet. What am I going to do?
When you're younger, 25 is like grown up. That's
so many years.
That's old. Do you know what I mean? You're 25, you're thinking you're going to have the house and the car and like the family and, you know, successful business or like successful career or whatever. You don't know a thing at 25. No. You don't know anything.
I'll tell you now, my life is not planned out in any way that I've imagined. Yeah. At any point in my life, I've had plans. I think I want to do this, or I want to do that. Yeah, I've not come close to getting what I thought, but what I've got has been different, but just as good, kind of thing. If you know what I mean. Yeah. It's very, very crazy how your life kind of changes and adapts. And there's so many times where I was just thinking, right, this is what I want, but you just end up doing something completely different. So my life has taken me in all sorts of directions, which
is good as well, you know, because
it is
you can also have a very a very prescribed view of what you want to do and what you want to be, and you stick to it like glue, even if it's the wrong thing. And quite oftentimes, I think with young people, it's actually not their point of view that they're following either. So they might be pressured by parents or grandparents, or it's like they know that, you know, their dad wants them to become a doctor or a lawyer when actually they're an artist or a designer, you know, and they sort of keep that, you know, hidden deep inside them, and they try and do what they think they're just going to impress their mum or their dad, or like, you know, what they're being pressured to do by the family, and get a good career and go and be a doctor and like all of this sort of stuff. And what often happens with that is that the child grows up into the adult and then starts resenting the person who made them do that, because they've lost. They know that they should have been an artist or a designer or you know.
I mean, I've been very lucky in that sense, because my parents will not push you at all in any way. They treated my sister and I as adults and trusted us, I think, to make the right decisions, which I think is very difficult for a parent to do. And they had that respect, and we had that respect for them. So we had never really had pressure to do a certain thing, or even really I mean, this is probably maybe one downfall of my parents, is they probably didn't push me enough in terms of direction, I think maybe, with what's out there in terms of job opportunities and stuff like that. You just don't know. And I just remember at school going to, not the job centre, but who's the teacher at school?
The sort of
careers advisor. The
careers advisor. Yeah.
And do you remember it, like 13,
I remember the careers
years
advisor at our school was basically whoever didn't have anything to do that day.
Yeah, probably.
Like,
yeah,
because it chopped and changed, and it was honestly like that sort of approach. It's like, who's the career counsellor today or whatever? Oh, it's Mr.
But
Mr.
the funny thing is that they're asking a 13, 14, 15-year-old boy what they want to do in their life. Yeah. And without any real life experiences themselves. And how do you even make a decision like that? Like, what subjects are you going to take in college for your A levels? And obviously, depending on what you get is going to determine what university you go to and what you do at uni. And to have to start making those decisions so early, I mean, it's just, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I mean, I think I wanted to be a chef at one point. I wanted to be I wanted to do something to do with mathematics and engineering, but I mean, I later found out that, I mean, A-level mathematics just flew over my head. I mean, even though I was good at that at school, I mean, realistically in real life, I wasn't. So I just remember like kind of just dreaming up kind of jobs that I potentially wanted to do. I was quite good at science at school. We had an engineering class where we actually we made circuit boards and like soldered in circuit boards and created kind of great kind of scientific projects, which I thought, oh, this would be something I'd love to do, engineering in some way. But again, I mean, it just didn't turn out like that. Going back to the kind of pressure of like parents talking to you and telling you what you should do in your careers. I mean, my granddad actually sat me down when I was like 10 years old, and he said, I've told you this before, go to university. You'll be the first Leslie-Rowe in the family to ever have gone to university. Make sure you go. It doesn't matter what you do. Just go, get the experience, get the life experience. Because at some point in your life, that degree will help you in some way. You probably don't know what that will be now, but it will definitely help you. Whatever you do, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And I was 10 years old and kind of looking up and thinking, oh yeah, I could do university. I'd love to do that. And and that kind of drove me to go, because there was options to do like apprenticeships, engineering apprenticeships, and other things like that. But I don't think I was really ready to go into the kind of working world at the time. I thought university would be great. So I mean, and going back to just skipping slightly forward, that degree, if I hadn't got that degree, I wouldn't have been able to come to Australia.
Yeah, that's right.
And I wouldn't be able to start my life here. So that's a huge thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it worked out in the end well for that. Good job. Your granddad had his head screwed on and gave you that solid advice.
I know. I'll go into all the degree part later on.
Yeah, we'll talk about all of that. But backtracking a little bit then, because I'm quite conscious. Yeah. You mentioned your sister there, and we haven't talked about your sister. So you just got one. Haven't. You just have one sister.
Yeah.
Or how old is she in comparison? Obviously, she's younger than you.
We are. Yeah, we're 15 months apart.
Right.
My sister Grace. We were so close in age that we weren't close as kids. Because
you weren't?
We weren't. No, we weren't at all. No. We hated each other, as you do. Not hate, but we fought. We had our own ideas and kind of we were kind of completely different, really. Having said that, really weirdly, now we're very similar and very close. But she was a keen figure skater, so she obviously followed me to the ice rink.
Right.
She started that and became like I mean, she was a champion in a few areas. I mean, she traveled the world ice skating until she was about probably maybe 15, 16 or so. She's living close to my dad at the moment in Shrewsbury, Shropshire, where we later in life kind of moved up there. But yeah. I mean, we had like we didn't have a real close relationship, and I think even she actually moved out of home at 17. She moved out before I did, crazily enough, right. And she spent about 6 or 7 years living in Mallorca. So we've kind of lived apart since don't even know what year that was, but since she was 17. So it's we've always been quite distant, and obviously now with myself being in Australia and her being in the UK, we're even more distant. But we're a lot more closer now. We're very similar people, which is very, very strange thinking about it now. So yeah. She's a good one.
What do you mean? Do you mean like similar personality? You got similar personalities? You mean
similar personalities? Yeah, we're both kind of relaxed. Well, I mean, looking back now, we just see where our kind of traits come from our parents. My dad's very chilled. He's that guy that's like calms the situation. I think I've only ever seen him get angry once at my mum, and that was when we were kids. They had a massive argument in the car, and he was just go, "Get the fuck out!" Slam the brakes on. We were only like 8 years old, and my mum got out, and she stepped on the side for about 5 minutes, and he opened the door and said, "Get back in again." And that was it. And that's the only time I've ever seen them argue, or my dad kind of raise his voice. Wow. So he's a very kind of diplomatic guy. My mum, very emotional, very fiery, but very, very kind and caring. Very, very good mum. So I think my sister has probably a bit more of my mum. We're both very calm people like my dad, but she probably is a bit fiery than I am. But I mean, you know me, Raging Rowe comes out sometimes.
Raging Rowe is the nickname that I know and love. Which we'll have to visit that later on to see where that.
Like I said, I'm quite a calm person, but I mean, if you push me to the edge, that's when
I've seen it a few times.
See it.
I've seen it a few times. Thankfully, I haven't been on the receiving end of a proper Raging Rowe. I might have pushed a few buttons when I've been slightly.
We've worked together for quite a while, so you've seen the odd.
I've seen a few. There's been a few Raging Rowe experiences. Put it that way, for sure.
So I've seen a few of yours.
yeah. I'm chilled now. I'm more chilled.
Honestly, now. You have changed so much since having kids. I mean, honestly, yeah, hugely. Yeah,
I don't have any energy left to be angry. Really, it's they've taken every ounce of my energy from my soul. So I don't have that. Whereas before kids, you've got that excess energy and sort of like sometimes. You know, it gets the better of you. Yeah. But I've still got that, as my fiance says, I've still got a fiery temper, which I always try and work on. You know, I get the red mist descends in certain situations. Yeah. You know, I wish it didn't, but
you're doing a good job recently.
Thank you for the feedback. It's much appreciated. So going back to when you were playing ice hockey, then Rick, so obviously you played ice hockey for quite some time.
Yeah,
and you must have gotten pretty good at it.
I mean, this is skipping forward a few years. I mean, I played ice hockey from the age of 8 years old to around 21. I managed to get into the Great Britain ice hockey team when I was 13 years old, which was amazing for me. I mean, I just absolutely loved hockey. I played 4 or 5 times a week. They basically just brought, I mean, there must have been about 20 or 30 kind of really good teams across the UK and they picked the team from that. Several in
So
Scotland.
like a trial? Was it like a big trial or something like that? Or
Yeah, we had a whole week trial. Yeah. So like a summer hockey camp, where they invited probably 50 or 60 of the best kind of hockey players across Great Britain. A few guys from Fife and Kilcuddy, and Priest, or I can't even remember the teams that we used to play up there. Sorry,
Creef? Was it Creef? No.
I can't remember now. But there's some real good players from Scotland actually that played with us. Real rough, love to fight. Yeah,
doesn't sound like us.
To scrap.
That doesn't sound like us.
Yeah. But no, I mean they put us through a whole week of rigorous training. I mean, it was very, very intense, and quite a lot of pressure actually. Looking back at it then, I mean, I really wanted to play for the Great Britain team. They had a whole kind of World Championships actually planned in Quebec City later on that year.
Which is obviously I was selected. Like Canada is like huge on ice hockey, aren't they? Like that's like the global. Yeah, Canada must be the global sort of like capital outside of like Russia, I would imagine, is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's the number one sport. They're the best in the world at it. There's actually the kind of junior world championships going on at the moment. Canada's just beaten Russia, and that they're in the final with the US. So the US have a great team as well.
Right.
So for the England team, kind of going over to Canada and playing in these world championships, we were actually playing as a country. We were playing local towns and cities teams, not the US or Canada. So their just local town had just as good a hockey team as our country.
Right.
So even though our country was a very good standard, we were still playing at AAA, which is the highest kind of junior standard.
Did you understand quite at that age, the gravity of like representing your country at what you were doing, or was it how did it feel? Was it just you just having fun with your friends?
Yes and no. I mean, we didn't really until we actually arrived in Quebec. Now, we were in a stadium of 18,000 people, and there were continuous games playing for a week. So the stadium was full for the whole time we were there. So we're walking around the rink. We all had Great Britain jackets. They were leather jackets. They were amazing, like proper jock. They were honestly. I actually found it at my dad's not long ago, and it's probably pretty cool now. So I might rock it again. We were as a team. We were just we were walking around. We actually got made hockey cards with our picture and our profile, our stats and everything. So in hockey, you trade your cards, you trade pins and stuff like that. So it's very much a kind of trading mentality. So you're meeting like other teams,
like baseball cards and all
baseball
that
cards.
stuff.
Yeah. So I had my own card. Dillan Leslie-Rowe has some great curtains, some 90s curtains.
Amazing. You still got it? You still got the card, or did you trade it off?
I still got the card. Yeah. I should have got that out actually. Yeah. I'll take a photo and send it to you.
I would pay good money to see that.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I look terrible. It's great. But like I said, so we're walking around this stadium and we're meeting other teams and stuff like other countries. But we actually had fans coming up to us and asking us to sign stuff. And I was like 13 years old. Like Crazy. And at that point, you're like, shit, I'm representing my country here. And I remember kind of Canadians kind of saying, like talking to me about Oasis and all the bands that were kind of all the great English bands that were happening at the time, and saying, if you met them, and like, we love Oasis and we love Blur. And it was just so amazing to kind of, to hear other countries kind of appreciate England and what we're doing. And as 13 years old, I mean, thinking about it now, I probably didn't appreciate it, but I mean, at the time, it was just so exciting to be in this tournament and playing in front of so many people, and just the nerves of going out there and playing in front of so many people. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, it just
it's such a young age to to obviously represent your country and to play against other, other countries at such a young age, but in front of so many people. That that's very it must have been very very rare, for such a summer.
It was so amazing. I mean, the competition was tiered, and we were in the third tier. So each kind of tier had their own kind of tournament, and I think we beat South Africa in the semi-finals to go into the final to play France.
Right,
and France whipped our ass.
Did they?
Whipped our ass. Yeah, which is a shame. But I mean, I think it was like 8-2 in the end. But it was just such a great experience, and we ended up traveling across Quebec down to Montreal. We visited Edmonton and Calgary. Did you pay
with you, or how did that work?
You know what? Going back to this was this is a huge trip. I'm 13 years old, and like I said, my parents didn't have a huge amount of money, so for them, they couldn't actually really afford to send me. They would have done what they could to kind of get the money together. So I had to get sponsored. So I basically just went around my school and just said, "Will you sponsor me to go to Canada to play for Great Britain?" And I just went around all the teachers. They all gave me a $5 each. And I think I managed to kind of scrape together maybe 300 or 400 quid
right
at the time, which I think was enough to kind of pay for my ticket.
Amazing.
There and back. Yeah. And nothing was really funded. I mean, the GB team had a bit of funding, so they were able to support us, I think, while we were in Canada for that, the transportation, and I think for hotels as well, potentially. I can't remember. But I remember it being touch and go in terms of me getting the money together to even go. So that was interesting. But yeah, just such an amazing experience, and one that I kind of look back now and I just remember it's just so great to be good at something, really good at something. Yeah. And I really kind of miss that, having that focus and that passion on one thing. I mean, that is things I have now that I'm really kind of passionate about, but that was my life at the time. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, you live and breathe it, and it's like, it's all you want to do. Type thing.
Yeah. So I ended up playing for a professional team in the UK at the age of 16 or 17, and that became a huge thing because I was playing 5 or 6 times a week and getting paid for it, 200 quid a week, which wasn't bad at that age.
Definitely.
And but then I quickly realized that if I continue playing at the frequency that I am, I won't have any time for anything else in life, including a job. And I could probably only make 1,000 a week at tops being an ice hockey player in the UK. And that would probably only last until I'm 25, 30. And then what do you do after that?
Yeah.
And then skipping ahead, I went to university, and then you start drinking and you're going out with the friends, and then things just kind of, you're not getting up at 7 a.m. to play ice hockey. It just it doesn't happen.
Life comes at you pretty
quick. It does. So that made decisions for me then. But I mean, coming straight back to kind of before I even started playing for the GB team, we stayed in London until I was 10 years old. As I said before, it was quite a difficult time in London. There just wasn't much money about. My mum and dad just couldn't afford to live in London. So they wanted to get out of there. They wanted to sell the house in Muswell Hill. They wanted to move somewhere up north where they could buy a house a lot cheaper. My godparents actually lived in Shropshire, which is an amazing county. We'd been up there several times to kind of visit them. And we also think about south of England, Brighton area, and a few other places. And as kids, I was such a keen hockey player at 10 years old. It's all I thought about. And Grace, obviously being a figure skater, we were like, wherever we move, because we were devastated about moving away from London, because it was such a great place to grow up. And I was just, had some great friends. I didn't want to leave. It actually hugely upset me, the thought of kind of moving away from that and doing something else. I was like, Dad, just please, can we go somewhere where there's an ice rink close by? That's all I want. That's the only condition I have. If we're going to move out of London, just please move next to an ice rink.
Yeah.
So my dad, actually, we pinpointed all the rinks in the north of England. Right. And we got on a map and we're like, well, where would we want to live? And we actually, as a family, sat down and obviously my mum and dad had ideas of areas that they wanted to move to. They'd obviously thought about it for quite a while. And so we wanted to be at least 20. You couldn't be any further than 20 minutes really from a rink, because it would have been too much on them. So yeah, like I said, we just pinpointed it on the map. We looked at the areas and thought, okay, have we been there before? Do we know what the towns are like close by? And as I said, we knew Shropshire well. My godmother lived in the south of Shropshire, and we pinpointed Telford, where the ice rink was.
Right.
And Shrewsbury, which is where we ultimately ended up moving to, was only 20 minutes down the road. An amazing little kind of medieval town, 60,000 people. Had an amazing kind of castle in the middle of it, a river kind of moating the whole town. Really beautiful place. And we obviously had friends up there. So Mum and Dad decided to make the decision to sell the house. So we sold the house.
I love that you had like a criteria of one thing, and that was
one criteria. That was like, I was 10 years old.
Wherever we go, as long as they've got an ice rink, good to go. Good to go.
Just the fact that my parents actually listened to me and took our thoughts into consideration is such a huge thing.
Big time, yeah.
So hugely grateful for that, because it was just the best part of my life, really, growing up as a kid. And Mum and Dad kind of did a few trips up there, found an amazing house. I think they paid something like 89,000 for a 6-bedroom kind of semi-detached terrace house. It was great place. I mean, we'd sold
that was what, 93?
That was 94. 94. Yeah, 94. I think it was 94. Yes, it was early 94. So, I mean, as I said to you, my parents are quite adventurous people, and they really wanted to give us some kind of an amazing experience as kids. So that transition from London to the countryside and Shropshire and Shrewsbury, they wanted to take us on some trip around the world. So my mum had this idea of, let's go to India for 6 months. And my dad's a bit like, whoa, okay, right. let's see what we can do. So they bought this house.
Is this in between when you're like, just as you move, so you haven't you haven't started the new school or anything like that yet, or is that what this is? Or?
No. So my mum and dad had purchased the house in Shrewsbury. We'd sold the house in London. We'd put all our stock, all our furniture into storage. We packed our suitcases from London and flew to India. And with the view that we'd spend 6 months there and then fly back to Manchester and then move to Shrewsbury and then get all our stuff out of storage. So yeah, it's completely in between. Myself and my sister hadn't even seen the house in Shrewsbury. We'd only seen photos of it.
Amazing.
So, yeah, as 10 years old, my sister was 9. We flew to India, we flew to Bombay. I remember landing in Bombay and it being like 40 degrees heat, like unbearable. And I remember being so excited.
How did your parents sort of like wangle that with like school, but authority?
Yeah. So I hadn't even covered that bit. I mean, back then, schools weren't as strict. I mean, you'd get a phone call.
You don't get fined for like keeping your kids off.
You didn't get fined. No. So I probably had maybe 3 months left of school in my last year in junior school. Right. And my mum and dad were like, we're just going to take you out of school. I think this trip is far more important than you doing your last 3 months of school, because I don't think we'll ever get this chance to do it again. And I want you guys to experience the world, experience other cultures, and I think you'll come away from this with a lot more value in education than you will do from your last 3 months at primary school.
That's
so for us,
legit.
we're like, get in.
That is a legit. As a 10-year-old, that is a legit thing that you want to hear from your parents.
I mean, it was music to my ears. I was like, let's do this. But quite daunting at the same time, because I mean, my parents didn't really have much of a plan. I mean, we were flying to India and we had ideas of where we wanted to go. But I think they pretty much winged it. I mean, looking back now, I mean, India as a country, I mean, it's a crazy place. I mean, most amazing place.
Why India? Why did they choose India?
I think it's just such an untouched place, and it definitely was at the time. I mean, what, 25 years ago? I don't actually know the full reason why.
Had you travelled much as a family before that, or
not really? Only really to Spain to visit my grandparents, my dad's dad, and my grandma. They moved over there in the 80s to South Spain. So no, we hadn't really done any traveling. I think my mum and dad saw, well, definitely my mum saw India as probably one of the most extreme places to go and to travel. And my mum was very into textiles and design and all of that. And in India is very, very much caters for that kind of thing. And I think it's just something that really excited my mum. I mean, this was my mum's idea. My dad was like, what are we doing? Like, my dad actually hated it.
Is he?
I'll tell you about this in a sec.
He didn't enjoy the trip. I mean, at all.
He enjoyed it, but 3 months in, he was like, I've had enough. Yeah, I was like, this is too much for me. So my dad actually said, right, I'm going to go back home. This is the crazy thing. Yeah, so we've got a house back home. Why don't I go back home, get all our furniture in, start doing it up and get it ready? So my mum, sister and I stayed for an extra month in India.
All right, so he actually did go home, and he went home.
He went home. Yeah. So we didn't do 6 months in the end. We did 4 months. So my dad left after 3. We spent another month traveling up to Rajasthan, saw the Taj Mahal, did the whole of Agra. I mean, I've got some great stories about some of the hill stations we used to go up to on these buses. Like, Indian buses are absolutely crazy. They're not weighted right. So there's 3 chairs on one side and 2 on the other side, and then the aisle in the middle. So if you think about it, all the weight is on the 3 chair side. So when you drive in, the buses are like this, and we're traveling up to hill stations, like seriously steep hills, and we're cruising along, and obviously the cliffside is the side that the truck is hanging over. So as kids, 10 years old, we're looking down and seeing this rickety bus with no windows or anything like that, and just hundreds of people in it, just kind of swaying over this cliff. And I just remember shitting myself and looking down and seeing wreckages of cars, like, and buses in the trees, and, like, down the mountain, and just thinking, oh my God, I'm not gonna survive. But just so many crazy little things like that, and it just will always kind of stick in my mind. I mean, we spent probably 2 weeks in a jungle in the south of India, and I remember kind of playing around.
This is obviously before mobile phones and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Your dad. I'm thinking of that from like a dad's perspective. Obviously, being a dad for myself, I'd be thinking I'd be worried sick about like where they were and like stuff. So how did your mum just checking in on your dad every so often just to say, hey, we're...
I have no idea. I'm sure.
Because that's a big thing for a mum to I mean, India, it's not like it's, like you said, the south of Spain, where you're just like going around the south of Spain. You know, it's India, it's remote, it's probably quite dangerous in certain aspects.
That's the thing about it is, not at one stage did we feel we were in danger the whole time. That was the crazy thing about it. We felt safe at all times.
Right.
With all the kind of the mayhem going on. I mean, the Indians were such lovely people. And we were really kind of connected, and they're just so welcoming. Wherever we went, we're just so welcoming. I mean, especially my sister being blonde. I mean, they just crowded her. We'd walk through the streets, and the young kids would just be like 20, 30 of them just around my sister, just touching her hair and stuff.
Yeah, because you've never seen anything like it.
She's never seen it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure my mum.
Here's a question for you. Do you think that early experience planted a seed of like a love for travel and, you know, seeing new places? Because you've obviously done a lot of it in your life.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's where that's come from, that early experience?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely would have helped spur it. I think my parents as a whole, and it's definitely been passed down to myself, is they've always loved to travel, and they have that urge to investigate and I can't think of the word now, but, you know, just challenge yourself, I suppose.
Yeah,
and
go outside your comfort zone and see new things.
Yeah, 100%. And I think doing that as a 10-year-old made me think, oh, you can do anything really. And it was just such a huge life experience for us. And I mean, I remember being sick for half of it, because obviously you couldn't drink the water. And
that's what I was going to go on. This is a delicate subject. I was going to say, was your dad's return to the UK related to the shits, in inverted commas, the famous shits that you get when you go to
probably
when you go to India?
Yeah. I probably reckon about 80% of the time I had the shits. I mean, it was intense. I mean, really intense. I mean, this is why I think I've got such a strong stomach now. Actually thinking about it, I haven't actually had a stomach bug and been physically sick from a stomach bug since I went to India.
Right.
I remember actually being quite sick before then, in fact, actually, and being quite ill at times. You know, when you pick up a bug and you're just violently sick for a few days. I haven't had that since. So it's definitely kind of strengthened the stomach.
Your gut microbiology from that trip as a 10-year-old.
Oh, hugely. So that was a great experience for us. So as I said, I mean, my mum,
must have been so hard as well for your mum, and like those 4 weeks that she was, a month that she was with you and your sister by yourselves.
I mean, I've asked her this before. Yeah,
it must have been so difficult.
How did you do it? And she, I mean, at the time, she was just like, we just did it. She was like, I mean, I had no worries. I had no stresses about it. We just kind of went with the flow. And I mean, we were good kids. I mean, we all kind of stuck together and supported each other. So we're kind of a good unit. I mean, we just went with it, I think. And I mean, I look back now and I just don't think I could do that with my kids. I just really don't. And my mum didn't have a care in the world, really. She had no worries at all. I mean,
respect.
I couldn't imagine. Yeah. I mean, full respect to her. And I've said to her many times, I don't know how you even did it or manage it, because it's
respect. I think respect in many ways. Respect to, first of all, acknowledge the opportunity for the timing of it. Second of all, is to actually act on it and to say, no, we're doing this. Then to actually pick somewhere like India and not somewhere closer to home, or, you know, on the beaten track type thing. India was, as you say, very much, you know, sort of like off the beaten track, not it wouldn't have been that touristy as such back then, where like around those parts, surely.
Not at all. Not at all. No, I mean, we didn't see. I mean, we saw a few tourists in kind of Bombay and a few of the larger cities, but most of the time we were kind of traveling the outskirts. And I mean, yeah, half the people there hadn't seen blonde hair, like as I said, with my sister. So it was really remote places, and yeah, such a great experience, and it's definitely changed me for the better. And it's something I will definitely do for my children when it comes to it, because I think it's just such an important thing. I was lucky, like you just said then, I was lucky enough for my mum to have actually thought about that and had the balls to do it, because a lot of people won't get that experience.
So, and then when your dad, it would have been easier. It would have been easy for your mum when your dad went home to just say, right, we'll go home then. But you know, she cracked on for a month, and you know, you were out there, you know, just you, your sister, and her traveling around India. That must have been like just an awesome experience.
Yeah, no, it was. And I mean, obviously a month went, and we were all thinking, right, we should probably go back to Shrewsbury now.
Go back to real life.
Move into our new home. Yeah. Because I mean, even for us, I mean, I don't think we could have all done 6 months, because it is quite intense, and just the traveling around,
huge culture shock of the whole thing.
Shock. Like, culture difference. Yeah. So we were all kind of really kind of missing home comforts, really. So it was an easy decision for us all to say, like, we should probably go back now. So yeah, great. Lucky enough, my dad had kind of the house kind of in place for when we arrived in Shrewsbury, our new town.
Amazing.
So that was between obviously schools then. So I was that. Well, we arrived, I think, May or June in '94, and then I would be starting secondary school at 11 in September that year. So starting a fresh school, obviously coming up from London. I remember going to the open day of the school, which was called Belvedere. It sounds quite posh, but it's actually in the worst part of Shrewsbury, right. And ended up being quite a rough school in the end, even though academically it was actually quite a good school. It was quite in a rough area. So that gave me some challenges over the years.
Because you obviously a different accent, different kid from somewhere else. You know, like obviously you were the out of town.
I had quite a posh accent that they thought was posh anyway, compared to their northern accent.
Yeah,
and I got shit from the start. I mean, real shit. I remember the first day. I mean, London was like quite in the 80s. It kind of got real baggy shirts and baggy jeans culture and like big trainers, and I was just copying all my friends' kind of older brothers, and we're all like quite cool at school. And I remember moving up there, and just no one had the same clothes on. Everyone was completely different to me. Everyone had a completely different accent, and I got a lot of shit for it. And I mean, the first day, I mean, the headmaster was really into sports, so he was quite excited about me coming, obviously playing ice hockey and everything, and we actually developed quite a good bond through the 5 years I was there. But he put a table with a load of kids that were kind of really into sports, and I kind of got to know them over the open day. And then lucky enough, when we started in September, a few of them were actually in my form at school, so developed some really good kind of friendships at school from the start, and people that I'm still quite close with now. I think a lot of people find that obviously it's such a young age at school, initially secondary school, that you don't always kind of carry on friendships from there, because you normally, I mean, a lot of my friends that I've met, actually close friends now, are kind of college and university and potentially later on in life. But I actually still have some really good friends from school from that time. However, I didn't really enjoy school. I don't know why. I mean, I really enjoyed Shrewsbury as a town. It was such a great place to be. And I had some great friends. But school wasn't great. I mean, as I said, I was not in the greatest of areas, and I mean, I got challenged pretty much every single day.
When you say
kids,
challenge, what do you mean? Was it like, were you in fights or?
people fights? Yeah, people in the older years. I just used to have groups of lads just starting me at school. I had people kind of waiting outside of school from other schools looking for fights and stuff like that, because it was very much it was quite kind of it sounds extreme, like a gang culture, because everyone had their own little groups, and there's probably like 7 or 8 different schools in Shrewsbury, and they were very competitive, and there were certain areas if you'd walk down the street and there'd be a group of lads and you'd probably get started on. I mean, It's still, Shrewsbury's a funny town. It's quite wealthy, half of it, but the other half is actually not. It's very much a working class town. So it has a huge split. So yeah, I mean, I just remember having kids outside of school just waiting for me to come out of school to start fighting me. And I mean, I think I had a couple of fights and I won a couple of fights, and that kind of gave me a bit of a reputation. So that's when I say people just tried to challenge me quite a lot, right, in that sense. I got into fights that I didn't want to get into, kind of thing. It's never something I'd ever have started, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how this even happened, but I mean, I had a fight with our history teacher's son was in my year, and a load of other kids were shit stirring around a few things, and they were like, "Oh, I can't even remember his name now," but they're like, "Oh, he doesn't like you. He wants to have a fight with you." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Oh, I don't want this," kind of thing. And we ended up. I remember walking around a corner, and he walked around the corner at the same time. We saw each other, and it was just a reaction. We just started fighting. And I ended up breaking his nose. And his dad was the history teacher, and obviously got in a huge amount of trouble. I got suspended from school. I mean, they actually called the police, and I got interviewed. Wow. I actually got a caution from the police. My history teacher pressed charges on me, which is a very strange situation.
My history teacher pressed charges on me.
Yeah. I was absolutely shitting myself. I mean, the first time I'd ever been in a police station, actually getting interviewed, they took my my fingerprints and everything, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I mean, I thought that was the end of me. Then I thought, "Oh my god, I'm going to go to prison."
Yeah,
kind of thing. You don't know it. I mean, I was only 13, 14. I mean, I didn't know anything more. And
how did your parents react?
I mean, my dad, do you know what? I can't really. I remember my mum and dad being okay about it, purely because they know I wouldn't have started it. I'm quite open with my parents, and I mean, I'm very honest with them, and they were honest with me. And I just told them what happened, and they were like, "It's just." Obviously, the next time, just step away. But I'm kind of one of those, and I've always been one of those people. But when I get pushed too far, it's kind of like, you shouldn't have started on me in the first place, kind of mentality when I was a kid. So I found it hard to step away from that, which has obviously taught me quite a lot now I'm an adult. I mean, I can step away, but at the time it was like, you challenge me, you're gonna regret it.
Raging Row comes
Raging Row, yeah. So that was huge learning curve for me, and probably something I needed, actually, because it shocked me quite a lot, and actually taught me to kind of step away from situations like that and not let your feelings kind of take over. So yeah, that was an interesting time.
Did you play ice hockey whilst you were at school? School have an ice hockey team or anything like that?
The school didn't have an ice hockey team, but yeah, I still played hockey. So I was at secondary school from the age of 11 to 16. As I said to you, the local ice rink was Telford. So 3 or 4 times a week, my mum and dad would take me up there and drop me off the rink to play. I'd play away games on a Saturday, a home game on a Sunday. So the whole weekend was pretty much hockey. At school, I played field hockey for the hockey team there. Very much into athletics, 100 meters, football team. The school had a really good football team. They had a rugby team, but so I never actually got to play rugby, in fact, actually, because a couple of years before, one of the kids actually broke their neck. So they actually banned rugby from the school. There's always something actually I wanted to play as a kid, but never really got the chance, and have never since, really. Too small now. So football was my main thing at school. We had a very good team. We went to the kind of UK championships. But having said that, it was always a side thing to me, because I just played hockey, and hockey was my main focus.
Your first love in terms of
my first love at the time. So yeah, I mean, as I said, yeah, school was an experience. I mean, but not something I so much enjoyed, but got some great friends and some great experiences there. I think I really kind of came to my own when I kind of started meeting new people at college and university. So I went to the sixth form college in Shrewsbury, where I initially did mathematics. I did physical education because I loved sports, and I did product design. And quickly realized after probably a week in mathematics that it wasn't for me. I mean, do you remember the advanced calculators in mathematics? I mean, just all those buttons. Yeah. I mean, I was just looking at those thinking, shit, how do we use a calculator? I mean, you know exactly.
I remember double maths lessons, because it's different in Scotland. Yeah. We don't have like college or sixth form or anything like that. We just have primary school and secondary school, as in like high school. And you stay in high school for up to 6 years, basically. So you don't move away to do like the A-level side, or like what we call Scottish higher side. So you're in there, school uniform the whole time, sitting in double maths lessons and like doing your equivalent of what the A-level maths thing is, and it was like, whoa, this is like, I quite enjoyed that. It was just when I went to uni I stopped enjoying that. So you done PE and maths, but did you drop maths and just stick with the PE, or did you pick up something else?
I did PE, maths, and sociology, and I did a half A-level in product design. After a few weeks, I realized mathematics wasn't for me. So I went to my form tutor and said, look, I just can't do this. What else can I do? And look, business was obviously something that I always wanted to kind of get into and have my own business and be self-employed, just like my parents were. So I did business. So came away with PE, sociology, and business A-levels with a half product design A-level. And I applied for universities again, not really kind of knowing what I wanted to do. I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea at all. I remember just kind of giving up and thinking, right, maybe university isn't right for me now, because I have no idea. I know I need to do something, but at the moment I'm just not in the right kind of mindset to decide. I mean, again, at 18 years old, I had no idea. So my friend Simon, who wasn't at my school and who wasn't even actually my college, but someone that I actually met the first week in waiting outside our college, looking for some girls to pick up. I remember. And we just got talking at the college gate, and he knew a couple of people that I knew, and we just became friends instantly. And he's now still one of my best mates, Simon Evitts. And
Evitts?
Evitts, yeah. And he kind of introduced me to a load of his friends from his school. And we kind of really got this great group together. There was probably about 10 of us, and a couple of people from my school, a couple of people from the college, and a couple of people from another school. And we just became a really good, close kind of knit group of friends. And the three of us, Everett and another lad called Dave, said, look, let's go traveling, and let's travel the world for a year. And then kind of decide what we want to do after.
What year was that then? So you finished?
This is 2001. This is 2001. So my college years from like 99 to...
Like, what did you do between the end of like your sixth form and that then? So there's like, did you?
Yeah, so I'm coming to this. So yeah, so obviously we planned to go traveling. We didn't have any money. So we were like, right, we need to start working properly here. So a friend of mine that I played ice hockey with was doing some labouring on a site in Birmingham. And he's like, look, there's a couple of jobs. Why don't you and Evitts come and work on this building site with us and see if you can save some money? So honestly, this is probably the hardest 6 months of my life. Never really done any kind of hard labour like that. I'd previously worked at McDonald's. I've not even told you about this. I've worked at McDonald's for a few years while I was at school, flipping burgers in the back. Did a few paper rounds. Had been working really doing kind of pot wash and stuff in restaurants since I was probably 13 years old. My parents were always like, you need to go out and earn your money.
Yeah. How long were you working at McDonald's for?
What's that?
How long were you working at McDonald's for?
From the age of 13 to 15, maybe 15, 16 potentially. Yeah. Yeah. So a few years.
You're working at 13. That's young. That's like...
Yeah. Yeah, I was pot washing in a restaurant at 13. That's probably my first job, I think. Well, no, I'd done a paper round before then. I probably ran 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And then I think I got a job at McDonald's. It must have been 14. Yeah, 14 to 16. I'd have to double check that, but yeah, I mean, probably about 3 or 4 of my mates worked there. So there was literally a big group of us that worked at Mackie D's. And we used to have our friends cruise past in the drive-through, and we used to just get a bag, fill it up with food, and just throw it out the window to them, and then just drive off. We used to throw out all our friends. But yeah. I'm trying to think where we were then. So where were we before then? You've sidetracked me then.
You were talking about labouring, doing hard labour was like really tough.
Yeah. Okay, so back on the building site. So we were labouring in Birmingham on a hotel build. We had to be on site at 6 a.m, and it was an hour drive to get to Birmingham. So we were leaving at 5 a.m. We were finishing work at 6:37, and getting back to Shrewsbury around 8 o'clock. So we're literally up from 5 to working till like 8 o'clock at night for 6 months. And it was hard graft. I mean, it was heavy lifting all day. So we would get home at 8 o'clock and we'd literally go to bed and then wake up again at 5 a.m. and do this. Probably a bit like your life, this. But without the labour part.
Without the hard labour, yeah. That sounds exactly what I do right
now. And yeah, we because that's all we did. I mean, we probably saved about £3,000 each over that 6 months, which doesn't seem a lot, but I mean at the time it was quite a lot of money. Yeah. And my dad actually helped me out with the flight. I think we got a flight for £1,000, and that actually allowed us probably 15 flights around the world. It was like a package that we paid for. So we initially flew to Thailand. We traveled through Malaysia to Singapore, flew across to Australia, to Sydney, went all the way up the East Coast to Cairns.
And then we did New Zealand to Hawaii to LA. And then we were meant, so this is a whole year. That's taken us a year to do this. And we were meant to do the whole of kind of South America, so Mexico, Brazil, Chile, a few other places. But we got to LA and we just ran out of money. I decided that after a year, it was just too much and I needed to go home. Whereas Simon Evetts, he wanted to stay and ended up flying back to Australia and getting a job on a building site there and spent another year in Oz. So I'd flown home by that point. And kind of, he used to call me every week saying, yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I'm back at home and I'm thinking, shit, I should have stayed in Australia. Why didn't I stay? But I just wasn't ready to get back into work. I just didn't want to work again at that point. And I'd have run out of money and we would have had to, I'd have had to get a job on a building site or something like that, some kind of labouring to kind of survive. And I just didn't want to do it at the time. But one thing I hugely regret, because I came back to England and again, I just didn't want to kind of have to get back into work or save money, because I had a credit card with me actually traveling, the safety credit card, just in case, you get stuck in a sticky situation. My dad was like, just take this. And I just remember actually running out of money probably about 7 months in and thinking, I'll just stick this on the credit card. So I remember actually coming back actually probably a couple of grand down on my dad's credit card. Right. So he was like, right, you need to get back into work, son, because that needs to be paid off straight away.
Yeah.
So that was a stark wake up call, straight back into work and kind of back into labor. And I think I got a job in landscape gardening. I got a landscape gardening job with the same company actually that helped me out with the labouring to start.
So by this time, this is 2002, is it? 2003?
This will be around 2002. Yes, correct. So still completely unaware of what to do in my life, knowing that I've got a bit of debt. At some point, I do want to go to university. So I thought, right, I've got to work for a bit to save some money. I've got to pay off this debt that I owe my dad. And I'd like to potentially, hopefully go to university at some point, but still no idea really what to do or when to go. Ended up kind of working again quite hard doing this landscape gardening. We were doing all sorts, mowing lawns, cutting hedges, building fences, mending roads, putting down car parks and driveways and all stuff that we'd never done before. I was driving diggers without certificates. I remember that, and they're a bit of a cowboy outfit. I remember building like golf courses and stuff. That quite a variety of kind of tasks and stuff. It was quite interesting stuff. But again, just made me think, fuck, what am I doing in my life? Like literally, what am I doing? And I'd actually saved a bit of money, and Simon Evetts, my best mate at the time, was like, do you fancy buying a house and doing it up and selling it? And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, back then you only needed 10,000 for a deposit and to get a mortgage. So we both I'd say $5,000, he'd say $5,000. We both put that in, ended up buying a house in the town of Shrewsbury. And it was a complete empty shell. And again, neither of us having a clue about how to project manage a build, how to do a house up. All we knew. Sorry?
How old were you at this point? So you must have been, what, 20?
So 21, 22. Yeah. We just knew that we had tons of mates in the trade industry. So we knew chippies, we knew plasterers, we knew electricians, we knew builders. So we literally just got on the phone to all our mates and said, look, can you do this? Can you do that? Mates rates, and within 6 months, we'd completely gutted out this house. We'd budgeted to spend another 10 grand on it. partly money that I'd saved and Simon had saved, and I had to kind of go to my dad and say, look, can you invest a bit in this so we can actually do the place up? Once we sell it, we'll pay you back. Again, we're all just like flying by the seat of our pants here, really not knowing what we're doing. And I'm pitching to my dad, like, I'll double your money kind of thing. And I mean, credit to my dad. I mean, he was like, okay, and son, well, let's see what you can do. And he ended up lending me $5,000 to kind of do this up. And I mean, I don't know how we did it. I mean, we went over budget by about $8,000 altogether. So it cost us $18,000 to actually do up. And we scraped the money from all sorts of places. And I can't even remember how we got it all together in the end. But we created an amazing house, and probably 3 months later got it on the market and sold it for a $25,000 profit on top of all our expenses. So I was able to pay my dad back $5,000, and me and Simon took 10 each. So we'd made $5,000, which at the time for us was quite a lot of money. So we're like, fuck, I want to be a property developer. This is what I want to do in my life.
Yeah.
And we actually ended up buying, over the period of 6 to 12 months, another, and doing them up and selling them off. But I remember again thinking, right, I need to get out of Shrewsbury. I need to do something different. And the kind of the housing market just absolutely spiked, and just unbelievable prices at the time, and things just became unaffordable. We couldn't find a property to do up. The competition was too high, and we really struggled to find something else to kind of take that next step to really kind of make the business profitable for us. It wasn't a business, but I mean, for us to kind of really make some money. So I decided to finally go to university. So this was 2006, I think. Having said that, I've missed a whole period of my life here. Okay, so university again came later on. So Everett and I decided to not go for another one. We made a bit of profit. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this money that I have? I mean, again, I want to start a business. I want to do something different. I don't want to go back into landscape gardening, because I remember being on the top of this roof in Birmingham, Star City. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a huge complex, cinema complex. And we'd been asked to go to the top of the roof to clear up. And I just remember it pissing it down, thrashing rain in my face, and just shovel and spade, just like scraping up this sludge from this roof, and just putting it into buckets and thinking, I've got to do something else in my life here. This isn't right. I can't do this. And my friend, Ash, who I was working with at the time, he was like, me too, mate. We need to change our lives here. So we both at the time made huge decisions about what we should do. And he ended up going to university. He was ready to go at the time. I still wasn't ready for that. And another friend of mine owned an ice hockey shop that supplied ice hockey equipment and skateboards and skates and stuff like that. So he'd been doing it for a while, but he wanted to kind of branch out a bit and actually create his own hockey brand. And obviously with myself being in ice hockey for so long and having so many kind of contacts in the area, in the industry, he was like, why don't you come on board with me? This is the stock that I have at the moment. If you come in with a certain amount, I'll go 50-50 with you. We'll create this brand, and we'll build a company from there. So we decided to start off with manufacturing our own ice hockey sticks, which we called Sabre. So Sabre was our company. Huge amount of kind of going back and forth with manufacturers, trying to find the right stick for us and to test them, and to ensure that kind of the cost was right and it was profitable in some way. Again, still really not knowing, although kind of Lee Davis, who was my business partner then, he knew how to run a shop, and obviously source kind of those kind of products. But to actually go to and find a factory in China or wherever the distributors were was a whole new kettle of fish, and something that was actually quite difficult and quite time consuming. We spent quite a lot of money on doing. We would get a batch of sticks, and we'd test them out. We'd get one of the local teams to give them a try, and half the sticks would snap. So we're like, fuck. Right, we need to go back to the drawing board and change the design and all of that. So there was a lot of cost in kind of getting that set up, and we finally got the right product. And I got the whole kind of Telford Tigers, which is the professional team in Telford, using the sticks. We had a number of teams across the UK come on board and use our brand, and everyone loved it. We then decided to kind of expand to Europe. My business partner, Lee, had a contact who one of his brothers actually played hockey with. He was a Russian guy. From Czech Republic. And he was living in the UK at the moment. He had a son that played hockey with Lee, my business partner. And he had tons of connections over in Germany, Czech Republic, Russia. So we teamed up with him to help us distribute our product to all the teams across Europe. So we had a base set up in Czech Republic where we had quite a lot of our stock, probably 50% of our stock, which we then distributed out to the teams that we had and the contacts that we had. So we've built actually a really kind of profitable business over the first year. It was quite impressive, really, about the kind of portfolio of teams that we had on board that were actually using our product. And we had an international account set up which supported the kind of European business, which our partner kind of managed. And it got to a point where everything was then distributed to our UK account. And that's where we did the kind of our finances. And after a few months, probably about a year in, we started realizing that a lot of our product was going out, but money wasn't coming in. And so I've kind of picked this up. I'm like, Lee, kind of what's happening over in Czech Republic? And because I'm seeing all these sales and everything going out, and all our product list going down, but the money's not coming in. Lee's like, I'm not sure what's happening here. I need to go to Czech Republic to find out kind of what's going on with Davidov was his name. And Lee got to Czech Republic, and this guy was nowhere to be seen. And we're like, right, what is going on here? We checked the European account, and there was nothing in there. We went to our storage, and all of our product, probably 45 grand's worth of product, was gone.
Does he have access to the bank account then, or this guy? Or?
Yeah. I mean, a huge mistake on my side is Lee trusted this person, and I trusted Lee's decision on that. I didn't really have much of a relationship with this person, but Lee did, and he had done over quite a few years. So Lee really trusted him. So I had no reason not to. So for both of us, it was a huge shock. I mean, we'd invested all this money in, and 30, 40 grand out of our account and a similar amount in stock had gone. And that's £90,000 in a small startup from the start. Absolutely devastated us. We just had no money. And it was a huge wake up call. We were just like, fuck, how have we let this happen? I mean, you never would have thought this would happen to us. And I mean, it's taught me a huge amount. I mean, back then I wasn't involved enough on that side of the business. I kind of trusted my business partner to kind of manage that. And I think if I'd been a bit more involved on that side of it, rather than just being the kind of sales side, which I was probably mainly involved in, is actually kind of distributing across the UK and part of Europe. But actually the hands-on handling of the kind of stock and everything like that, I was kind of detached from. So, I mean, now as a business owner, I mean, I couldn't even imagine being detached from that side of the business and not being kind of hands-on enough to know exactly where every penny is going.
What did you do when you found out? Did you go did you get the police involved, or what happened there?
I mean, the hardest thing is, mate, I mean, we went to the Czech Republic and no one speaks English. So we're there trying to talk to the police, talk to the storage unit that looked after all the stock, and the bank, and we were just dead ends. We didn't get anywhere. We were just literally in the dark. We're in a different country. No one wanted to help us. A couple of English lads, and they're just like, whatever. It was just like we felt helpless. We couldn't do anything. Yeah, it was. I mean, we just came back with our tail between our legs, and I was very angry.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, me and Leaf, we fell out about it. I mean, we've not really spoken since, and we were very close friends before then. And to be honest with you, I think it's more because we haven't actually sat down and talked it out. I think we were both very angry at the time, and we just kind of went our separate ways and have never discussed it fully. It was such a sore point.
Yeah.
So that was very hard to deal with at the time. We kind of lost a good mate there as well.
Did you ever hear anything of this Davidoff guy, or what happened to him, or anything like that? Nothing. He just literally disappeared into the air, and that was it.
No one knows where he is. However, we did manage to get out some stories while we were in Czech Republic that he'd done a similar thing to other people. He was basically a con man.
Right.
So he'd done a similar thing with other businesses. He gets in with builds a relationship, and throws a few things your way, and you're like, oh, this guy's good, and he's obviously real smart guy. So yeah, we didn't see it coming. Crazy. So that was a difficult time again, because I mean all that time that I'd spent kind of saving money and building something from the properties, and then putting it into something I was really passionate about, ice hockey, and then suddenly having nothing again, back to zero.
Yeah.
I was just like, right, do I want my own business? But I mean, at that point, that kind of actually put me off for quite a long time. And that's probably why I actually decided to go to university at the time. So this is around 2005, 2006. So, and again, I still don't know what I want to do in my life. So again, it's like, what do I do at university? My mum was very creative, and I mean, I'm creative in a sense as well. And she was very into design. So I thought, I want to do something in design. I was into fashion at the time. I was very into fashion. So I was like, right, I want to do fashion design. Why don't I do fashion design? I didn't know the workings behind fashion design or the process behind designing thing or anything. I just knew I could be creative at times. I knew my mum was very creative. So I thought something I'd actually really enjoy doing. So I actually applied for Loughborough, Leeds, Manchester University, a couple of others. I actually got into Loughborough, and it was too much of a small town for me. I wanted a big city, so I was 50-50 on whether to do that.
Good sport uni though, Loughborough.
And that's why I nearly went. Because a great sports university. Yeah, I was so tempted. That's why I initially applied for it.
We used to play football against Loughborough when I went to Newcastle. Uni, they were always them. It was Loughborough and Bath were always really, really good. Like sport, like football and rugby, like hockey and all of that sort of.
Yeah.
I always remember playing at Loughborough and thinking, they've got great facilities. And they you could tell they were in shape, they trained properly, good coaches, they were professional, set up, the pitches were immaculate. I remember thinking, Loughborough tasty, like, 'cause that's where the England universities team used to play and used to train between Bath and Loughborough. Always remember.
Right. No, and that was one of the main draws of going to that university. But still, ultimately, I just wanted a bigger city.
Yeah,
and I kind of had my heart set on Leeds or Manchester. Manchester, I didn't get in for fashion design, but they offered me textile design as a course. And I just wanted to go to the University of Manchester so much. I was like, yeah, right, let's go for it. Again, not knowing what I was getting myself in for. So I remember getting to my first lecture. And
so hang on, you started off doing textile design.
Started off doing textile design. Haven't I told you this before?
That's what Jez, my fiance, for everyone's listening, that's what her degree was at. Her was in textile design, but at Leeds.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's what her degree was.
Yeah. Well, same with Zara. Obviously, my wife to be. Well, coming up, she was doing textile design as well, and that's how we initially met. Obviously, at Manchester Uni. But I mean, just going over this. I mean, I remember sitting in my first lecture and looking around and being like 150 girls. 150 girls. There was like 3 guys, one in front of me, one literally just to the left, and another guy right behind me. So it's 3 of us on this like kind of palladium looking down over the lecturer, and just thinking, shit, I'm in for.
Landed on our feet,
I know, landed on my feet. Yeah, 150 girls. Like, what? This is what I hope for.
Yeah.
But I remember speaking to the guy in front of me, Johnny, and then the guy behind me, Zach, and all 3 of us kind of looked at each other and we were like, what have we got ourselves in for? And ultimately, we became best mates, the 3 of us, and that's another story. But the course, I mean, lectures and actual classroom work. I mean, I was in a classroom and I was at a sewing machine all day sewing, and like never touched a sewing machine in my life. I mean, my mum had an old Singer in the corner that I used to play with as a kid and push the pedals, but never been on a sewing machine. I mean, I've just seen my mum do it all the time. So this was obviously a dumbed down version of that actual pure fashion design. So we had a module of actually designing stuff, but 90% of it was actually building the product and actually sewing. And I was just like, wow. I mean, this isn't for me. I mean, I can't do 3 years of this. There's no chance. So, I mean, I actually did a year of it. I did a year, and by the end of it, I spoke to Johnny, and he was like, I don't think I can do this either. And we both came to agreement that that it just wasn't for us. So I was like, well, what else can I do? I've always wanted to do a kind of business degree. And I sort of spoke to my tutor, and she was like, why don't you do a business and buying degree? And you can still stay within fashion, but you can be more kind of business and buying focused. I was like, that's a great idea. So next year started in that. And I remember it was actually probably the first, the module of buying was actually the first or the second year that the university had actually done it. And I remember starting the first year, and then a whole newspaper article come out about degrees and the best and worst degrees. And there was a most useless list of degrees. I remember the chart. And fashion buying was at the top of the most useless degrees to do. And I'm thinking, fuck, what have I done?
What have I done with myself?
Yeah, but that was only a small module of it. I mean, mostly heavy business. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm still interested in it, so I'll go ahead and do it. And just coasted through 3 years of business and buying. I came out with a 2-2. I didn't necessarily try that hard. I mean, looking back now, I should have tried a bit harder, but university life just kind of, took a hold of me.
As it does.
And met some great people and had some really amazing nights out, and one of the best experience. I mean, the first year at uni is one of the best years of my life, really. Just firstly, being away from Shrewsbury and being in a big city and being fully independent, even though it was later on in my life. I mean, I was 23 when I started university. Everyone in my course was, I mean, there's a few older guys, and lucky enough, Zach and Johnny, my two closest mates now, are the same age. But everyone else was around, obviously, 17, 18, 19.
Zach, he stayed in the original course, did he?
Zach, yeah. Zach, no, Zach. Do you know what? No. Zach. So that story is quite slightly wrong, because Zach was actually in my new course, so it was just Johnny in my old course. So that's when we all came together in the second course.
I was just wondering, because if you were saying you were best friends, and did he? No, because so Zach was in the new business course, and the new one, right,
and then me and Johnny came across from the textiles course, and then we ended up all sitting next to each other. And we became best mates, and ultimately they were two of my best men at my wedding, further down the line. Where were we at now? So university.
So you've got so this must be like 2000. So you went to uni 2006?
2006 to 2010. So I finished in 2010. During that time at university, I worked in retail jobs. So All Saints, which was a great company to work for. Got loads of clothes free during uni when I had zero money.
Yeah.
And then I finished university, and I again still had no idea what to do in my life, and I ended up working in Gucci in retail part time for a bit of time after university, because a friend worked there. The money was a lot better. Mm-hmm. And this is probably around the time that I met you, Chris. I mean, you moved to Manchester. What year was it?
Yeah, it was. So I moved to Manchester in. It was 2008.
2008. So I met you before then. Yeah.
It was 2008. It was summer. It was kind of like summer time, or maybe like August, September 2008, something like that. And I remember meeting. We talked about it before, but I remember the exact place that we met at the bottom of Market Street. And our friend, Ben.
I was at All Saints at the time. So I was at All Saints in retail, and my boss, Ben, who you were with that day, and I obviously said hello to him, and you were there, and we got chatting, and then friendship went from there, really. And we spent many a night in a nightclub, dancing the night away.
And the following day and morning.
And the following day,
all of that. All of that good stuff.
That leads on to my direction in terms of my career in recruitment. Again, we spoke about this before quite a lot. During my years at university, I was so much into music. I mean, I've been clubbing for years and really passionate about it. I bought myself a set of decks, DJ decks. Actually, it was maybe the second year actually I was at university, and just taught myself to DJ, and I was just on them every day. And there was a club called Sankey's in Manchester, as you know, quite an iconic club, now closed down, unfortunately, a few years ago, because they built some houses and some apartments, and end of an era for a lot of people.
Horrific. I don't know if I told you this, but I might have sent you the photo, but I saw something online, and it was like a networking event. and there was all these people. Did I send you this photo? And it was a networking event, and it was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life, because it was this networking event, and it was obviously people who didn't appreciate what Sankey's was, what it meant to so many people, what the culture that existed, that it was there, and the music and the good times that was had right on the spot that they were stood. And they were like, literally, they had like champagne flutes and name badges, and they were eating cheese and crackers, and they were stood right on the dance floor where the where the pillar like was, and the DJ, you could see where the DJ booth used to be and stuff. And it was like a networking type event when they changed it all around into like flats.
Sad.
Oh, and I saw that and I was just like heartbroken, thinking, oh my God, it was like they just don't know the people in that photo.
I know. So many stories, so much history.
So much history. I mean, think about the friendships that were made there, and the relationships.
Well, I met my wife to be there.
Yeah,
my wife to be there. She was working on the door.
Did you actually meet in Sankey's? Is that where you met her?
Pretty much. I'd been for a night out in Sankey's, and I'd actually seen her from across the room, and I was like, wow, she's good. And Alex Hill, who works for us now, I was with Alex at the time.
Right.
He was like, I was not a night out with Alex. He was like, yeah, I know her. Name's Zara. I'll introduce you. But I remember I didn't get to speak to her that night for some reason. But we came to the club the next week, and she actually worked on the front door. So she had the clipboard, and she was the gatekeeper to let you in or not. So I was with Alex again, and I got chatting to her as she let us through. And then she came into the club later on that night, and we kind of just got chatting from there, really. And it probably took about a year or so until we actually came together properly. Because I actually had another girlfriend in Shrewsbury. So I was actually in a long distance relationship at the time. It wasn't hugely serious, but I had a girlfriend at the time. So nothing really happened between me and Zara for quite a while. But we got a really good friendship on, and she used to let me in the club free. She used to get me drinks free, and she used to sort all you lot out for guest lists and everything back in the day. And
back in the day.
And our kind of friendship just grew from there. And I mean, probably a year later, me and my ex-girlfriend had split up probably a few months before, and we just started realizing that we probably liked each other, and started flirting from there, and made it official probably about 6 months after that. And relationship went on. I mean, we had some great times together, and it was later on, I think, and this comes back to you in terms of my career and where I wanted to go. I remember just being in Sankey's, and Zara had been saying to me a few weeks before, look, what are you going to do? And I was thinking to myself, I don't know what to do. I need to find a better job, because working at Gucci just isn't doing it for me. And we were in Sankey's, it must have been 2 a.m. And I remember Zara running up to you and saying, Dylan needs a job. Have you got any jobs at your place? What do you even do? I don't think she even knew you were a recruiter or whatever. And you were like,
I remember being worse for wear, certainly. I'll put it mildly. Couldn't even see straight at this point, probably. Because I was at that time, I'm like a single lad in Manchester. Just moved from living in Newcastle for 8 years. I was, we were going out and we were partying and having a good time, and obviously love my sort of like techno and dance music and stuff like that. And was in Sankey's every week, pretty much religiously. It was the place to go for like that type of music, obviously in Manchester. And myself and our very good friend Sal, we'd just be like, I mean, we like, if you think about where we lived, Sal lived in Spectrum, where the same apartment building that you lived in at the time. And I lived in the Fresh Apartments, which was just literally like round the corner, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was just next to Salford Central train station. So pretty much Deansgate. You walk up and then you're on Deansgate. So you're right, pretty much, city centre living. And on a weekend, you finish work, you could literally just like your world's your oyster at from Friday 5 o'clock until you have to go back to work on Monday at like 8:30. It's like game on, wasn't it? And
great place to be at the time.
Absolutely amazing place to be. Like the culture and like the music and the people and everything like that. And I was just sort of out and just having fun with Sal and having a great time and being irresponsible and boisterous and just having a good time. But I remember clearly being in Sankey, clearly as in like, I was obviously worse player, but I remember when Zar came up to me because I thought at the time it's such an odd moment because I'm like, I remember being on the periphery of the dance floor and Sal was dancing sort of next to me, and I remember Zar coming flying up to me and sort of like pulling me to the side, and I thought I'd done something wrong or I was going to be like chucked out or something because obviously she worked there at the time and stuff, and I thought, oh no, what have I done? And then she sort of like, obviously it's super loud in there because obviously you're in a, listening to techno music and it's like boom, boom, boom. And I just remember shouting, Dill needs a job. And I was like, thinking like, what? Are we talking about this right now? And I sort of like, was like, right, okay. And I was like, are you serious? And I couldn't work out if she was like serious or just like.
She's quite proactive like that.
Yeah, very like forthright and like sort of like went straight for it. And I remember saying to her, like, look, I can't talk to you in this state. I can't talk to you about this just now. Like, tell him to give me a call on Monday at like 8:30 or like whatever, 9 o'clock, and I'll see what I can do. At the time, I worked for it was called Dilan IT, so it's like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, IT recruitment firms in Europe, owned by Manpower, and they then rebranded to a company called Experis. And then Monday morning came around, and obviously I'm feeling hungover and knackered and all this weekend party, and I didn't actually think for a second you'd call. And sure enough, the phone rings, and it was like pretty much to the minute of when Zara says you were going to call type thing. And I thought, right, okay. And then, I remember I had to speak to my boss and then my boss's boss and, at a LAN and managed to get you an interview basically. So
I remember actually borrowing your suit to go to the interview. I didn't have a suit. Remember? It was real tight on me.
Yeah.
And
I remember. Did you not wear your? Because you worked in the Gucci shop within Selfridges at the time. Remember?
Yeah, I didn't wear the Gucci suit. No, it was
not. But it was. I'm sure you did. You not have a Gucci tie on or something like that?
Yeah, I might have done. Yeah, probably a Gucci tie. Yeah.
I'm sure it was like a Gucci tie, but it was my suit and. I just remember I didn't know a thing. I didn't know a thing about recruitment. I remember you just like giving me like a quick whirlwind tour of recruitment and how it works and whatever. And I mean, I went into this interview really not having a clue. And I mean, it obviously went really well. And I remember coming out the interview saying, "Oh, that went quite well." And what was the reaction from the manager, Chris? I wasn't even the manager, but there was one person who shall remain nameless, who was interviewing. He was in the interview, and his instant reaction when he came out, because obviously I'm buzzing, like I'm like looking in. I wasn't obviously allowed to be in the interview, obviously with you being such a good mate of mine, but I really wanted you to get the job. I understood the context of the predicament that you were in. You were still working in retail after uni, and your whole weekend was like, you know, dominated by like working in, you know, in the shop, and you wanted to obviously a career to go into and stuff. And I actually, you know, at that time, you know, I'd been working in recruitment for probably about 4 or 5 years or something like that. And so I really believed it. This was going to be my career, and I knew how good you would be in the job, being such a, you know, a good people person, and, you know, you got the right, you know, a good heart, and, you know, do things that I believed you would do things the right way and work really, really hard. So I was like, I remember during your interview sort of like pacing up and down and like sort of like
trying to look in. Seeing you go across the window a few times.
Looking in, because it was like glass-fronted meeting rooms and stuff, wasn't it? It was all glass.
It's in the top of your head.
Yeah, like sort of like see and see how you're getting on and stuff. And I remember after the interview, once you'd left, I said cheerio to you. I remember speaking to the people who were in the interview, and this one chap was sort of like, you know, I sort of said, so how did it go? How did it go? I was dead like excited. And he was like, yeah, you know, I just think he's maybe a bit too good for us. I don't think I think he's the kind of guy that would just, you know, he would just leave us and go to another company after like a couple of months. And I just remember that really annoying me. What really annoyed me about that person's attitude was a couple of things. So there was the sort of general negativity around saying something like he's too good, you know, he'd be too good for us, and, you know, that sort of like attitude. That was one thing. The second thing is that it annoyed me because it really sort of downplayed how good we were as a company and a group of people, because we were all really good operators, really, you know, experienced professionals. And I just thought that whole thought process was really bewildering. And the other side of it was that
very strange to say.
You're a really good friend of mine, in that you wouldn't have done that to me. And just the whole philosophy of like not giving someone an opportunity because you're scared that what they might do in the future. Like it's, you know, it's like a total made up fantasy situation in that person's like head. You hadn't even started with us. You'd never worked a day in recruitment in your life, but here this person was saying that you were going to be too good, that you would actually leave us in a couple of months. It's like total speculation about what might happen. And I made me angry, because I thought that this person, if they listen to, might deny you the opportunity of getting out of the situation you were in, getting into a career which I knew you would be really good at. And for what? Just out of pure fear and negativity. So yeah, it really pissed me off when they said that. But thankfully, Laura, you know, who would, you know, would be your boss, was really, you guys really clicked.
Yeah. No, and she was great, and ultimately that whole kind of scenario kind of dictated my working life going forward. And as I mentioned before, I mean, my life's never really been planned, and I've always had ideas of what I want to do, but like I said, I've always kind of gone in different directions, and I've just fell into things. My whole life I've just fell into things, and I've been lucky enough for it to in some way work out, although I've obviously had a few speed bumps along the way, but I'm still alive. And I think I am one of those people that are probably just happy to try anything. I mean, I'm not scared so much of failing. I don't think. I mean, I think it's a huge part in life. I think, just going back to your point about the interview, I mean, to have that fear of not taking a jump or committing to something or taking a chance on something or someone, I mean, you'll just get nowhere in life. I mean, we're all kind of scared of or have a fear of failing. No one likes to fail. I mean, it's the worst thing possible, but you learn from those things, and you need to be putting yourself in situations where there is a chance you might fail, but if you succeed, then I mean, the rewards are just tenfold. And I've never been able to necessarily set myself a goal and say, look, this is where I want to be in my life, or this is what I'm going to do, because I've never really hit those goals. But when I come to it or come to some kind of challenge, I think I've always done quite well to kind of get over that. And I mean, even at this point in my career, I mean, starting off in recruitment, I was a DJ. I was DJing in nightclubs 2 or 3 times a week. I'd started, I mean, I've always been really into music, and making music was a huge thing to myself as well. I mean, my mum played the piano, the flute, and my dad played the guitar. Having said that, I never actually learned an instrument growing up because it just wasn't cool at school. Yeah. I would have got beaten up at my school if I'd been in the band. So it's never, I wish that actually something I'd done as a kid is learn piano or something like that. But I never did. So my kind of creativity on that side of things came out within making dance music and kind of alternative types of music. And I mean, I was lucky enough to have a couple of tracks released on some labels, Viva Warriors being one of them, and Applique being another. But it didn't kind of come naturally to me, that side of things. I wasn't, I couldn't just play a bass line or piano or create some kind of melody in my head and kind of put that down. It was all very much kind of trial and error for me. So I was very good at hearing a sound or hearing a beat or a snare or some kind of instrument and putting that together to create something. So it was all very much a trial and error process for me, but I was quite good at that. And I've kind of over the years become more refined and better at using the kind of tools and equipment to create music. And finally and probably now I'm probably only really kind of, I would say, good enough to be creating good quality music. However, back then I did manage to release a few tracks, but looking back at them now, I'm thinking, shit, they were crap. But I've kind of stuck to that ever since. And just going back to that, I mean, it was still a thing in my mind. It's like, do I want to kind of full-time be a producer or a DJ or whatever? So
because at the time when you started with us in Atlanta, it solved your problem of getting out of retail and having to work in weekends, because you were obviously DJing and stuff.
Financially,
I was just going to say, it didn't really solve you in the first year.
No, but it was still an improvement on what I was on.
Yeah,
I mean, in fact, you're actually right, because I actually did take a bit of a pay cut to actually start in recruitment, because actually my commission was quite good in my previous job. And there was actually a point I remember actually sitting you down.
Yeah, I remember a few times, and you were like, I need to go and get another job type thing, because I'm not earning enough money and stuff. Because for anyone listening who doesn't understand how recruitment works, when you start in recruitment, obviously recruitment's a sales job and you get paid mainly sort of commission. So when you start with no experience, you start on a really low base, and that's the way that normal recruiters are paid. They're not paid a great base salary, but the base and the commission together, if you're doing a good job and you're making a lot of placements and everything like that, and then that can be an okay salary, fairly lucrative as such, but definitely not in the first couple of years you're in the job. You're not going to be earning like a six.
I started on 14,000 base.
That was it, yeah.
Which, I mean, looking back now is nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
So yeah, I remember sitting you down after probably 3 or 4 months and saying, look, I mean, I need to earn more money here, otherwise I'll have to leave, kind of thing. And recruitment is a process. I mean, you don't start making placements in the first 3 to 6 months, even though I was lucky enough to make a few. In terms of remuneration side of it, it wasn't a huge extra kind of benefit on top of my base. So really struggled that first year. I remember a few times thinking, is this even right for something to actually support me financially? It was only really into the second year that I actually started to be able to build a relationship.
Yeah, I remember saying to you, just stick with it, because I was the same. I mean, like when I started in recruitment, I was on like similar. I mean, I was on less. Like I was on like 13,000 base, and like, but I was straight out of uni when I was 21, and I thought 13,000. I was like, yeah, great, it's 13,000 more than I had in my bank account right at that moment in time. So I was like, and I was living on, like I said to you, baked beans and Tesco 9 pence, sort of like Tesco value noodles, basically, and broccoli. For whatever reason.
Mate.
This is it. So, but yeah, I was the same, and I the first like year or year or two, I didn't earn like hardly anything. I was just kind of like learning the craft more than anything, really.
It wasn't only that. I mean, my partner at the time, Zara, she was in a kind of career crossroads also. I mean, she'd been working at Sankey's, the nightclub, and been head of promotions for several years, and she had a terrible boss, as you'll know, who just didn't treat her right. Stupid hours for not much money. So for her, she was at a crossroads in terms of what do I do in my career? So both of us were in a similar situation at the time, and money wasn't flowing. So we were both kind of struggling, and that's obviously why we thought many times about kind of finding a new job other than recruitment to see if we could bring in more dough. But we were also just both kind of fed up with Manchester at the time, and we'd been there for kind of 6 or 7 years, I think, by this time. And I mean, Manchester, it rains every bloody day, and every day, and it just becomes depressing. And if you don't have money to kind of enjoy yourself, it kind of gets even harder. However, my partner at the time, Zara, I mean, she's a very ambitious person, and she completely switched around her careers and got into beauty, cosmetic tattooing, which is obviously back then not many people did, and she built a great business in the UK at the time. So that helped me massively and kind of gave me a bit more freedom. But we both were kind of unhappy, I suppose, with Manchester and even the UK. And you were a huge factor in this, Chris. Obviously, me working alongside you at Elan for 2 years or so, and you obviously been to Australia, to Sydney, absolutely loved it, to go and see one of our friends, Ben, who I used to work with, who was living over there at the time. And you just came back saying, right, I need to move to Australia. So we used to go to work every single morning. You used to give me a lift to work, and every day we used to talk about Australia.
Yeah,
and our plans
we were still living in the same place as what we had. Well, when I first moved to Manchester, I was still living in the fresh apartments. Yeah. You were still living in Spectrum, and I was commuting.
So I just walked 2 minutes around the corner to you and jump in the car with you.
And I used to. By that time, I had a car and stuff like that. Well, I had a car initially when I moved to Manchester. It was just a little green Fiat Punto, little thing that I bought for like, $1,000 or something like that out of the back of the paper. Yeah. But then I had another car shortly after that. And what we used to do is, instead of jumping on the tram, because where we lived, because we were like city centre, but Elan was based in Altrincham, which is South Manchester. It was the very end of the tram line, basically. And it was like very slow and cumbersome trying to get from the city centre to all the way to the end of the tram line. Take you forever. So I used to drive in, park my car, give you a lift. And then by that time, when I went to that 6 week holiday in Sydney, I came back and I was like dead set that I was going to hand my notice in straight away.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And, they gave me a promotion and into like a better role and more money and sort of stuff. And it sort of stopped me, and I thought I need to take this opportunity. And they gave me a chance to like manage the Barclays Bank account for the business. And it was like a big responsibility, and it was very much a client relationship management role, and essentially spending probably 4 out of 5 days traveling all over the UK, and then mainly in like Canary Wharf in London. Churchill Place is where their HQ is, and I'd be like building relationships and dealing with managers, not doing actually any recruiting. And I thought, I've got to follow this through and see, give it a couple of years. But that didn't stop me from thinking about Australia every single day. And because you'd obviously been there traveling, you knew what it was all about. I couldn't talk to anyone, obviously, that I worked with about Australia. Sal hadn't been to Australia, who was my best mate round the corner, who lived in Spectrum, same apartment building as you. So he didn't really get it. And then every morning when obviously he came and jumped in the car, I'd always remember saying to you, Dill, just fancy just talking about Australia? And you'd be like, yeah, let's do it. And we used to just chat all the way to work about Australia and how good it is, and like
where all the best plans were made.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I said,
but it's the funny thing as well. You talk about Sal obviously not being to Australia, so he couldn't relate to it. But Zara, my partner, she'd never been to Australia. So I'm talking to her saying, look, Chris is going to move to Oz. What do you reckon? I mean, do you think you'd fancy it? And obviously I'd been traveling there. I'd spent 3 months kind of driving up the coast, and really enjoyed Australia actually, but actually enjoyed quite a lot of my other trip compared to Oz, because at the time when you don't have much money and you're traveling, I didn't really appreciate Australia for kind of what it is. And I never actually at the time thought I could live here.
Yeah.
But then thinking about actually kind of moving to Sydney and getting a job and actually having the money to live there, it'd be a great place to be. So I'm selling this to Zara, and she's just like, yeah, fine, let's do it. I'm game.
Yeah.
So that's when probably, I mean, I don't know how long after. I mean, you got the offer, didn't you? And
yeah, I mean, so I remember being in, I interviewed with various places, and doing interviews at like 5 a.m, and it was pitch black outside, and I'm sat in my kitchen and in the fresh apartments in a suit, and like doing these Skype interviews, which at the time was very weird, but I was dead set on it. I managed to I got an offer from company People Bank, which are like Australia's biggest IT recruitment company. And I remember saying to you, like, it's happening. I had to go through the whole visa situation where you're sort of applying for a temporary visa, 457 is what it was called back then. And I had to wait for a couple of months for that to happen, and all the rest of it. But the whole process, as it was moving along, we were still commuting in together, and I was still driving you. And I remember saying to you,
so I'm taking mental notes.
Yeah, all the time. I was like, when I got over there, mate, remember you saying you need to get me a job and stuff, and I'm like, and I'd be like, mate, I definitely will. But at the time, I never really believed that I'd be able to. I just sort of like was being like, like defo. And and then when it came to actually,
I mean, lucky your boss was a Scot.
Yeah,
a Scotsman, just down the road from where you're from in Glasgow.
That's right. Yeah,
so you had a great relationship with him from the start.
Yeah, I'm from a place called Baillieston, which is in East End of Glasgow, working class area.
So you were in his ear from the start.
Spencer was from Denniston, which is literally like a mile and a half or 2 miles away from like where I kind of grew up.
Yeah.
And he was Rangers supporter, and I'm a Celtic supporter, so it was that instant kind of like banter. But we got on like a house on fire, and it's the exact same sense of humour, because we're obviously from the same place, and we know the same places, and where we grew up, and just the same types of characters basically. So as soon as I got over there, I was trying to obviously build relationships with people, obviously in the business, and didn't mention anything obviously because I needed to prove myself first of all. I can't be going in and going, hey, my mate wants to come over here, can you get my job? You know, it was like,
I was going to say, it was a few months until I actually got the call from you. I think it was a good 6 months until you actually kind of called me and you were like, Dill, I think there's some jobs coming up.
Yeah, because
I'm going to see what you can do.
I had to build my own, because I mean, like, nobody knew me from Adam, you know, back, and then like, no one knew if I was any good. Instead, you have to go into a new environment and prove yourself all over again, even though I've might come with a decent CV or decent experience and stuff, but nobody really knew if you were any good. So you having to like prove yourself all over again. And obviously in a new market, a new boss, new people, I'm still like getting used to like being in Sydney. Obviously moved there with Jez, and we'd only been together a year, and trying to make obviously that all work and everything. So I didn't feel like I was able to rock up and then start like saying after a couple of weeks to Spencer, like, hey mate, we got my mate back, and like he'd be like, do some deals for like, well, yeah, let's see. So, and obviously that would only have helped you as well. So like, you know, knowing that you wanted to do that and everything, if I was in a good place and had gotten, you know, made some like quick wins and had a decent enough reputation in that 6 month period where people were like Spencer would have actually taken that seriously. If I hadn't been any good and I had said, oh, my mates like want to come over and stuff, then your chances would have been severely affected by that. And I was conscious of that as well. So I wanted to make sure that, like, you know, you stood a good chance. I knew how much it meant to you and how much you were really dead set on doing it. I just never thought that the opportunity would come up so quickly in terms of like the. I mean, you probably weren't thinking it was quick. You're probably thinking, bloody hell, it's been months I've not heard anything. But I'm thinking, like, after 6 months to be able to make the phone call, which we always used to joke about the phone call, like the bat phone going off in the middle of the night. And I'd be like, I'm going to call you, and you're going to have to this red telephone next to your bed. And it's just going to ring in the middle of the night. And it's going to be like this dramatic thing. I mean, we used to have a laugh about it, obviously, in the car and on the way to work. And I mean, that's pretty much.
It was a similar thing, but without the red telephone.
Without the red telephone.
Similar scenario.
Yeah, it was just a boring old mobile phone call, basically. No, but it was, Spencer asked me if I knew anyone else, and I was like, defo. I know the guy.
Zara and I were in a kind of quite important time in our lives also, because I mean, I remember it was my 30th birthday. And I'd actually taken Zara away to Barcelona, where I proposed to her, and which she accepted. So we were engaged to get married.
That was right.
So and obviously at the time talking about going to Australia. So we're thinking, how is this going to kind of work and everything, or even are we even going to get to Oz?
Do you remember the story with the ring?
Which
do you remember?
No.
You must remember the story about you remember where the ring came from? Where the ring?
So the ring was Jez's old ring. It was an engagement ring.
So my partner,
I'd completely forgotten about this.
Yeah. So my partner Jez was with someone for 10 years, and she was cheated on, and the guy done the dirty on her, and she had just gotten engaged to him, and then she found out they'd been sleeping with someone else for some time and all the rest of it, and she kept the ring basically, and obviously wouldn't give it back to him, and he was demanding this ring back and stuff because obviously it was worth a fair bit of money, and she kept the ring the whole time. And then we met like maybe a year after they split up, and then she just had this ring in her possession, didn't know what to do with it and all that rest of it. And then when you were talking to me about obviously, going to propose and stuff. I didn't want anything to do with the ring. I was thought, saw it as like some sort of like poisoned object, because obviously I was in love, and this was a symbol of someone else's love towards my, the love of my life, which she was.
So I was like, I'll buy it off you, wasn't I?
Yeah, you were like,
I'll buy it off
you. Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a very good stone. It wasn't actually the stone that I wanted to initially give to Zara, but it's something that I could have traded for what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember thinking, right, I'll buy it off you. I'll take it to the jewelers and see if I can trade it in for a ring that I think would be great for Zara. I mean, I ended up swapping it for just a stone, and then finding a separate ring and having a kind of a ring actually made up for it.
Yeah.
So, you know what, mate? I'd completely forgotten about that. That's another good story. Yeah,
that was.
yeah.
I remember the whole
we
shenanigans about trying to get you. Like, I had this massive thing about the ring in my head, and I'm like, don't even want to see it because I'd never physically seen the ring. I didn't want to like look at this ring.
Right.
Like, fucking hell, it's like unbelievable because she was with a footballer before, and I was thinking I don't want to see this ring because it's just going to like upset me type thing. So I didn't want to. I literally didn't want to even lay eyes in it, and I never did. I never actually even physically saw the thing. Like,
it wasn't a good ring, mate. It was terrible. It was a bad one.
So I remember she must have given it to you directly then.
Yeah, she did. Yeah. I remember.
And you know what? And just when you said about the Barcelona thing, I remembered. I was like, oh wow, I remember it now. You have getting the ring from Jez and then trading it for something else, and then obviously going to Barcelona to propose and all of that sort of stuff. Like, mental.
And then actually, I remember Zara actually had us arrange a surprise 30th for me as we returned from Barcelona. But you had just left, I think, for Australia.
Right.
So that was the start of that. So then 6 months later, obviously, I got the call.
That was October 2012.
So my birthday was... Yeah, that's when you went. Yeah.
I landed in Australia on the 18th of October 2012, basically, because it's Jez's birthday on the 19th.
Yeah,
and it was hard. I remember it was her birthday the very next day.
After that, so I mean, so then you arranged obviously a call with Spencer, the boss, and I had a couple of really strange calls with him. I remember like picking up the phone to him and just hearing this real strong Scottish accent, like 10 times stronger than yours. I mean, it's still deeply strong, isn't it? It's quite funny.
Yeah. It's because
I remember we just had a casual
wife,
chat.
Because Spencer's wife is from Glasgow, and they talk to each other all day, every day in quite Glaswegian slang. And he still maintained that. Whereas when I moved away to uni in Newcastle, I had to dumb my accent down because nobody understood a bloody word that I was saying. So yeah, Spencer's got a good thick Glaswegian east side of Glasgow accent for sure.
I just remember it being like just a casual chat with him. I mean, just a bit of banter, and he asked me a few questions about what I've been up to and my experience and stuff like that. And I mean, I didn't actually have the full experience of what that job entailed. It was very much a new business job, which I hadn't done much of. So for me, it was we
blagged it big time at the time. We blagged it big time. Come on, be honest.
I mean, I was just about to say I bullshitted my way through it.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, Spencer's going to listen to this and go, "You."
He is, yeah. Bastards.
No, because you hadn't done any new business at all up until that point.
No. I mean, it was all account management
and stuff like that, and we had to. Yeah,
we was convincing Spencer that I could actually pick up the phone and bring in new business.
Yeah.
Which was a funny conversation. But I mean, it was just like, I mean, we got on, and I think that's the most important thing at times. And obviously, I had a great reference from you. So, I mean, I think I spoke to the MD, Deny Jeff, after that, and again, another very kind of casual conversation.
Great guy, Jeff.
And I remember you kind of messaging me saying, "Dill, there's going to be an offer for you." I'm thinking, get in. Obviously, that process took a bit of time, and then I got another call from you saying, right, I'm really sorry, mate, but we've gone into a recruitment freeze. I can't remember the reason behind that. I mean, what was the situation there? I mean, it doesn't really matter, but they'd basically gone into recruitment freeze for 3 to 6 months. And I had an offer on the table, and I'm thinking, shit.
I don't know if that was at the time when People Bank were bought over by Recruit Holdings, or did that happen later?
No, that was later. That was when I was there.
Was that later? Can't actually remember.
Yeah.
Remember what it was all about. I mean, it was nothing. It seemed like at the time it was such a like a very standard thing that people knew. Oh, this sort of thing happens every like year or like whatever. But to you,
yeah,
it was obviously like.
I mean, I had an offer on the table. I'm there ready to change my life and have my notice in, book my flight, and come over. So I'm there kind of then in limbo, like all prepared to kind of tell my boss, and I can't do anything until I get the kind of go ahead. And obviously it's the visa application that I have to go through. So I couldn't actually start that properly until I actually got the final offer. So I'm just kind of just waiting around. And it was probably about 4 months until I even actually got the go ahead after that. And again, the visa process took probably 2 months after that. So I was just left there waiting for 6 months, like not even being able to tell my boss, which I told one of my bosses, I told Laura straight away. I didn't tell Jared initially, which I regret telling because he was quite annoyed with me when I told him right at the end. But I always just thought that recruitment's quite cutthroat, and a land could be at times. And I just thought if I tell them, and I don't actually leave straight away, they'll start thinking about replacing me straight away. Yeah. So I didn't want to say anything, but I actually kind of regret not telling Jared from the start because he was a great guy, great boss.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Really good guy to work with. He's a great, I missed him quite a lot. And he was a bit pissed off with me at the time, and I thought, fuck, I shouldn't have done that.
I think it was the same with me. To be honest, when I handed my notice in the end to go to he wanted to know and stuff.
Well, he lost us both in the space of 6 months, so he was gutted. But the great thing is, I mean, obviously the freeze came off and the visa got approved. That was a huge process to kind of get myself and Zara on there. And
going back
we flew over.
Going back to what you were talking about, that your granddad told you about the degree. And that's
great. This is the next point. So to actually get sponsored, to get sponsored, I would have either needed 2 years experience in recruitment and a degree, or if you don't have a degree, you need 5 years experience in recruitment. And at the time, I only had 2 years. So if it wasn't for that degree, I would have never got sponsorship to go to Australia and to move to Australia. So I might not be here now if it hadn't been for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my business and buying course helped me the most by just getting me that visa.
Yeah.
I mean, and nothing really else.
I didn't concentrate about those things. I remember seeing a commencement speech online, and Steve Jobs was giving, like one of those commencement speeches where people are graduating, and it's a very famous one. And he's talking about like his life. He's like, he tells 3 stories from his life, and it's really, really interesting video. You should all Google it, and it's like I think it's Stanford commencement speech on YouTube. Steve Jobs giving it, and he says something in it that I think about very often at the moment, and that is, you cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking back. So it's like, do things and don't try and work out if it's the right thing to do right now. And if it's, just do it if it feels right, and just trust that somewhere in your future, then that it'll work out. And there's so many instances now that I'm a bit older in my life that I can look back on and be like, if I didn't do that there, and I didn't, go to uni, or like didn't meet you at the bottom of like Market Street that day, and or like when I met my my missus and stuff like that. There's so many instances like that. So that story you told about the going to university is exactly that, because you probably you weren't sure about the course, but that stuck in your head probably from all those years ago when you were 10 years old and your granddad told you to go to uni and be the first Leslie-Rowe to get a degree, and just you might not know why. Just amazing.
I mean, it is amazing, and it has always stuck with me, and that has kind of been my life. I mean, you kind of just deal with what comes in front of you, whether it's planned or not. Just bringing me back to my granddad. Another thing he said to me in the same couple of sentences when I was 10 years old. He said, "You're also the last male Leslie-Rowe in the family. So if you don't have a boy, the name dies with you." And I'm like 10 years old going, right, I need to have a boy. Otherwise the family name is gone forever.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's another bit of pressure he's put on me.
Pressure.
So I know. So hopefully I'll have a boy at some point. But yeah, mate. Yeah. So, I mean, going back to ours. So me and Zara, we landed in Australia, 2013. Yeah. June the 20th, I think it was. Oh no, May the 20th. And I think I started the first day in June, I think. And I mean, I'll always remember, and Zara, my partner, will as well. We landed in Australia, and we didn't want to ship all our stuff over in a separate container, so we actually put it all in suitcases. So we had 4 huge suitcases each. It cost us an absolute fortune in extra baggage, but it meant we can bring it all with us, and we didn't have to stress about waiting for anything else to come over. I remember waiting for the taxi, and none of the taxis were big enough to take our luggage. Finally got a huge one to get it all in there, and just looking out, and it was just torrential rain. And I looked at Zara, and she looked at me. I was like, we just come from Manchester where it had been torrential rain. And we're like, oh God, what have we done? And we got in the taxi. We rocked up at your house because obviously we were staying with you guys in Coogee. We were meant to be like staying with you for the first month or so while we started looking for a flat. And we got to yours, and the taxi driver was like, "Oh, that's $100, please." And I'm like, shit, $100. And I didn't have any cash on me whatsoever. So Chris, you're running out from your house with a bit of cash.
Yeah.
Paying for this taxi. Bloody hell, $100 for a taxi. Zara looks at me again going, oh God, what have we done?
Yeah.
And,
I remember how expensive that taxi was, and I was thinking, bloody hell, he charged you guys for like each suitcase rather than just the distance, which is what's normal.
I know, yeah. He added on to the suitcases, yeah. So I think I don't know if he conned us off that, or that was actually the case, but it cost us a fortune. I remember getting to yours. It was early morning as well. Wasn't it like 9-10 o'clock? And I remember you just cracking a beer open.
Even that, because I remember cracking a beer
earlier
and thinking, this is weird. Yeah. It was like 6:30 in the morning, or 7 in the morning, or something like that. And it was on like a weird day. It was like a Monday or like something like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I'm drinking.
It was still raining outside.
Drinking beer.
And it didn't stop raining for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
For torrential rain for 2 weeks. Our first 2 weeks in Sydney. And again, me and my wife were just like, or wife to be, we're just like, shit. I hadn't started work by then.
Yeah.
And we were tasked to go out and obviously find a flat. And I mean, the great thing about the rain is, like, we look back at it now, is because it was so wet, the Aussies just don't go outside when it rains.
Yeah.
So no one was at any of the viewings. You know, the competition, what it's like to get a flat in Sydney. I mean, when you went, you had 30, 40 couples there, all in the same place. Looking.
There was 25 couples, so there was 50 people in a 2-bed, really quite small 2-bed flat apartment, and we had 10 minutes to look round and decide if you want to put an offer. The whole process to me was just like, what is going on here? It was like a cattle market. You know, it was like literally
all your documents in place, ready to go.
Yeah, I had to have all the documents and all of the same level of detail and scrutiny that I had to apply for the visa to actually get into Australia. I had to give the same level of stuff to the estate agents to get the flat, written references, and offer letter for your job or your pay slips and like, you know, your visa details and your passport. And it's like, I remember having to say to there was a chap there from like the estate agents, and I really liked the place, and everyone who you could see, because there was 50 people in there was probably about 8 or 9 couples who went and like sort of said to the guy, yeah, we're going to put an offer in, gave like application forms and all that sort of stuff. And I remember taking it to the guy to the side, and I was like trying to do some sort of like dodgy deal with him. I was like, listen, mate, I was like, I like this place. I was like, wink, wink, you know what I mean? I was like, what do I have to do to get this place? And this guy sort of like leaned in and he was like, put in an application. And I was like, listen, I know that. And I even on the spot, I was like, listen, I'll put in like, I'll give, I wanted people to hear so that they were put off and getting the place. That's how competitive it was. I was like, I'll give you an extra $10 a week on it and stuff. And I could see people going, oh, like he's like up in the price and all that already, and we ended up giving like more than what they were asking for just to have a chance of getting this property, because we'd been gazumped on like probably 3 or 4 apartments before that, because we were living with our friends Jim and Erica, and for 2 weeks before we got
you were lucky to get that, real lucky.
Yeah,
because I mean we were lucky because we had the complete opposite. I mean, must have been maybe 2 or 3 couples at each of our viewings, so we had no competition whatsoever. I mean, we got accepted on two houses we were quite interested in within the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then we made a decision on the one, literally just around the corner from yourself. Nice little place. It had a balcony that looked over the sea, which is perfect, what we wanted. And we were in there within 3 weeks or so. And we never left Coogee.
Yeah.
Spent 5 years there.
Good times, Coogee. Good times, Coogee. So good.
Oh, amazing. And obviously, I started to work at People Bank. I think it was the first week in June. I sat straight opposite you. I was like, bloody hell, back next to you again.
What you wanted, mate.
We had a great team. Obviously, Spencer from Scotland. We had Amy, who works with us now from Bosnia. And James, another Brit, full of Brits.
James, James Proctor, legendary.
What's that?
Legendary little team when you look back on it. Like, it was just
yeah. I mean, we did great things at People Bank. I mean, they didn't really have a digital team then. I mean, you and I helped kind of build that and build that practice and really work with the kind of current clients that we had at People Bank and establish that digital presence, which they didn't actually have before us kind of joining. So it was a great little experiment for us as how to build a desk and how to build a company really in that space. And it's definitely helped me kind of with Digitalent now. And I suppose it's probably spurred you on at the time that that's something that we want to do further down the line. And I mean, we talked about doing our own thing, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, but right at the time, if you remember, we sat on like that old school kind of quad seating arrangement, wasn't it? It was like there was like a partition, and like it's quite old school. It wasn't like one of them high partitions, but it was like quite a corporate environment, wasn't it? Yeah, quite corporate, and it was like overlooking Sydney Harbour and like a really nice swanky office. Everything you would dream of like working at when you were in the UK and it was raining outside. You know, like one like amazing office overlooking Harbour Bridge and all of that sort of stuff. So it was really like amazing from that perspective. But yeah, our whole strategy when we started that at People Bank was like just to get business in and, you know, like just get working from wherever it was. So we were working across all areas of IT, and then eventually because I mean, James were doing sort of more infrastructure type work. Spencer was doing more of the senior end. I was doing development, and then you sort of gravitated more towards like doing more. I mean, you were doing development as well, but you were doing more sort of, design really,
creative
and creative, and that's how we split it. And that was the kind of first time we kind of sat in that type of environment, and we built it up, and obviously sharing a lot of clients and building relationships out out there. But what we started really in that moment was we started a company within a company, really. Because the practice that we built, the digital practice, People Bank had no brand at all in the digital market. They weren't seen as working in the digital space at all. So we almost had to fight against People Bank's brand in a lot of ways, in terms of being able to go out and have credibility with a lot of these companies, to be able to, because People Bank was like a suit, shirt, tie portfolio.
We were seen as a generalist, really, weren't we? Not specialists.
Yeah, and it was like going into like
change that perception.
Yeah, the big banks and stuff. Whereas, what was that?
I just whacked me up at the table.
Right. I thought something fallen off something.
Just my elbow.
Yeah, we had to go through a whole thing about like convincing like the chief exec Peter to like let us go out and like dress down and, you know, casual dress and stuff, because we weren't, you know, obviously we were rocking up like old school recruiters from like the 90s. We're like, you know, like shirt and tie, and it just stuck out like a sore thumb. So we had to, it was a big learning experience for us both to try and build that practice. And it was almost like having like with the safety net of working under the brand and the incubation of a much bigger, successful brand. But that helped us from a security perspective, but it didn't help us from like giving us a leg up into the market. We had to fight for absolutely everything. We had to fight against the brand, which made things difficult in many ways. That's when we started the meetup, and tried to sort of like bed into the sort of digital market. But yeah, that was our first kind of like, there was a realization, I think, from both of us to say that like, yeah, we could probably do. Yeah, we could do something here. We felt like we were doing it in our own way. We were changing things like the culture of the team in the office of like, dressing down and dealing with these different types of companies on these different types of roles. And everyone was kind of fascinated, but also like thought it was a bit weird as well at the time. If you remember, there were people like, they were just like, what are you guys doing?
It wasn't normal to them. It's stuff they hadn't done before. And I think there was a lot of buying.
I used to bring my camera in. Remember my camera?
Yeah.
I used to bring my camera into the office like every day and just plonk it in the desk and start talking when I had an idea, start talking to it or take it to a meeting room. Everyone thought I was some sort of weirdo in like 100-person office, and they were like, why are you walking around with a video camera talking into it himself?
Visionary, mate. A visionary.
Well,
a leader.
I just knew that it had legs, and I knew that the way that everything was going with YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all the social sites, that video content was going to play a huge part. And I was really interested. At the time, I had read a book on the bus and the commute on the way home from People Bank, and it was a book that I just gotten randomly off the internet, and it was called The Launch by a guy called Jeff Walker, and it was all about this guy he was one of like the sort of pioneers of like email marketing back in the 90s, and he'd worked as a stockbroker and then made millions like in his dressing gown doing like email subscription stuff, and I was thinking I could do that, like I could definitely do that.
Yeah.
And I had that idea. I remember busting through the door to Jez after I ran. I remember sprinting up the path, and I ran through the door and spoke to my girlfriend at the time, Jez, and I was like, I've got this idea, and I'm going to build a website, and so I was thinking, I want to build a company, but at the time I was still employed under a temporary visa with People Bank, so I couldn't do anything that was going to jeopardize my employment and therefore my visa. Otherwise, it'd be like either kicked out of the country, I'd have to go and find another visa sponsor, or it would just be a real hassle. So I wanted to do something that would teach me how to start a business, build a website, do the marketing side, the video content, social media. I wanted to learn all of that stuff, but I didn't want to raise the suspicions of my employer at the time. And I thought, oh, what can I do that I know that I'm good at, and I know that I know a lot about, and that people would listen to me about, and especially on these videos and stuff, but that wouldn't get me sacked, basically, from people buying. So I thought, we'll do something like interview coaching or job search coaching. That's not a service that a normal recruitment agency would pay, I expect candidates to pay for. So I thought I'll sell my services out of hours to people like, internationally, and see if I can give them like interview preparation advice and help with the job search strategy and everything like that. So I kind of set this website up as a job search coach, and done that for a little bit. And that's what taught me all about marketing and social media and how to build a website, a WordPress website from scratch, and how to write content and do these videos. And really, when I was bringing that video camera and that one right there into PeopleBank, I knew in my head that I wanted to start my own business, and I wanted to learn the ropes of it. And I think the whole experience of like building a digital practice at PeopleBank had given me confidence to be like, because before I started at PeopleBank, I didn't feel ready to start my own business, because I'd worked in account management a lot of the time and client relationship management roles. I didn't feel that, but like Spencer's, I thought management was perfect. His management style was perfect for you and I, because he
gave us the freedom, didn't he?
He gave you the freedom. You felt compelled to never let him down, which in itself I think is a really good leadership trait. I don't think it was a tactic of his, but I just think we're so much friends with them and on a level with them, and there was a trust there and an understanding. I just always felt really like responsible for not wanting to kind of like let him down. So so that kind of gave us the confidence to start something. But at the time we talked about it, we joked about it actually in the team.
Early stages though, yeah.
Do you remember in the team I used to shout to Amy actually across the desk and to you, and be like, should we just fuck off and just go and start a business by ourselves? And we also just laugh about it. But in my head I was thinking, I'm fucking serious. I'm dead serious in my head. But obviously you have to make out that you're joking because you're in the middle of the office or whatever, and people laughing and stuff. But in my head I was like, no, I'm going to do that like one day, definitely. But just had to.
That was always something in my mind also. But my mind wasn't as mature as yours in terms of kind of getting ready to kind of do that. I mean, during that year, obviously we were engaged, myself and Zar, and we were in Australia actually trying to plan a wedding back in the UK, because we planned to have it back in the UK. Obviously, when you were going to Oz, we thought we wouldn't have many friends there in Oz initially, so we couldn't have the wedding there, and half our family wouldn't be able to get there anyway. So it's a good chance for us to come back. So we spent the next kind of year planning a wedding from Australia, which was probably one of the most hectic things I've done in my entire life. Not only that, but we were paying for things in pounds, but saving in dollars. And the dollar was getting weaker and weaker to the pound as we got closer to the wedding. So our initial budget of however much, by the end of it, by the time we actually got married, had doubled purely because of the exchange rate. So we're like, what are we doing here? And it's crazy. I mean, weddings just absolutely escalate beyond belief. You've got this to come back, but I'm sure you'll be a lot more reserved. I mean, Zara, my partner,
we won't be having any extravagant wedding. We're actually contemplating at the moment just using COVID as the guise to just us two just go and get married and not have to invite anybody, basically. So
as you know, because we were getting married back in the UK, by law, you actually have to be in the country for a certain amount of time to actually get registered to get married. But because that time was, I think, more than 2 weeks or so, I couldn't actually get enough time off work to get back to the UK in time to get registered to actually get married officially. So as you know, we had to get married in an office in Australia, in Sydney.
Course.
And you and Jez, you forget about this, didn't you? You
I
and Jez were
all of that, mate. Yeah. I forgot about it.
Yeah, you and Jez were our witness. We didn't tell anyone. No one knew because we wanted the wedding in the UK to be.
I remember now because I had Zal's mum on one phone on like FaceTime.
Oh yeah.
And I had
I
was calling your dad on Ivor's phone, and I was like, so I was like the witness / cameraman, and I remember standing with the iPhones, and like Zal and the two of them were talking to each other, like Zal's mum was talking to your mum and dad on the iPhones, and I was holding it. And obviously, you guys were in front, like it was like a total bizarre situation.
It was bizarre because I never imagined to actually officially get married in an office, in a registry office. And that's not something that I ever would have done. So that was such a weird day, but a great day. Obviously, you being there, and we went for food and a few drinks after, didn't we? Didn't tell anyone, so no one back home kind of knew about it. Ended up. I mean, obviously, we went back to see the family. We got married. We went on a honeymoon to Bali on the way back to Oz.
I was supposed to come.
Nice.
I was supposed to come to that wedding. You remember? And I double booked. And I had to go round and tell you that I
know you're so gutted, mate. I know. I can see it on your face.
Oh my God! And I got so worked up because I had to go round and to tell you. I felt like I had to tell you in person, and like, and you were very.
Big ask to go all the way back home. I mean, what didn't you have another wedding?
No, it was. I had another wedding on the same day. I'd committed to about a year before, and I totally forgot about it. And I got the dates mixed up, and then I was like, I just couldn't get out of that. I just couldn't get out of it, like. And I had to come round and tell you. You were very gracious with understanding it, and I was just like, oh God.
If I have a second wedding, then you best make it to that one.
I'll make it to that one, mate. I promise. I won't let you down twice, mate.
Good man. So I'm just thinking. I mean, after that, after we returned, I've been in recruitment for probably 5 years by then, and to be honest with you, it was taking a bit of a toll on me, and my wife had built her business quite successfully in Sydney, and actually needed some help kind of taking her to the next level in terms of kind of building a shop and building the business. So I decided to actually take a couple of years out of recruitment. I mean, I didn't know whether I'd actually ever get back into it or not. I mean, I just wanted to do something different and have a break from it and kind of clear my mind on it. And decided to help my wife. I mean, we rented a new shop, and I got that renovated and put in a kind of marketing plan for her. And we built the business quite successfully. And I mean, she's still doing it amazingly now. And it definitely got to a point where after a year or so, I mean, the two of us working hand in hand became something quite difficult for us. And I definitely felt as a person that I'd kind of lost my worth in that fact. I didn't have my own thing. I think working recruitment and doing all that and having those plans to start our own business further down the line was something that I had ambitions for. And I think working side by side, my partner, I think kind of really kind of took that away from me. I was very kind of dependent on that, and I didn't have my own thing. So that was quite hard on us, I think. Definitely. I don't think we really realized it at the time. But that was probably the start of our demise, I reckon.
Right.
I mean, the thing is that we had it pretty cushy. That's the thing. I mean, the business was doing very well. We were making good money. We had a good life. And to be honest with you, I got really lazy. It was a really kind of lazy part of my life where I knew I should be doing more and definitely doing something for myself, but had it too easy to think, I don't want to give that away.
Yeah.
Because I have the freedom to work when I want, where I want, kind of thing, and support my wife on a business that she's got. But ultimately, to do it was the right decision, but to stay in it for so long and then not do something myself was the wrong decision, 100%.
Yeah.
So I kind of learned a lot from there. But like I said, at the time, I didn't really kind of know the seriousness to it all and the impact it probably would have had on our relationship. But that's just probably the starting factor of that. Not long after that, well, probably a year of working together, I got a call from my dad to say that my mum had cancer, which, I mean, as I've said to you before, I mean, I've had a pretty easy life up until here. And we've spoken about this, obviously, when you've talked about your family and everything. And I've never really had any kind of losses in my life whatsoever. And you see your friends go through things here and there, and you appreciate the severity of it, but you don't really relate fully until something kind of really happens to yourself. And so that was a huge, huge shock for me to hear that my mum had cancer. I mean, as soon as you hear cancer, you think that's it. You've lost your parent. And so that was really kind of.
How did your dad approach telling you that?
Well, he just rang me up and said, your mum's not been well and she's been to the doctors and she's got cancer. And I mean, I could hear it in his voice, and he definitely had a kind of tear in his eye when he was telling me. So that was quite hard because I hadn't heard my dad so upset for a while. And I mean, just for me to hear that, obviously being so far away from the family, and that's obviously the most difficult thing about living in Australia and living away from your family, is you can't be there for them. So that was the first realization of shit. I'm miles away here from my closest family, and I can't really kind of help out. So obviously my first thought was like, right, I'm going to jump on a plane. I'm going to come back. But my dad was like, look, it's fine. It's early stages at the minute. The doctors kind of planned for surgery. It's cervical cancer. So cervical cancer is normally quite good. If you catch it, it's contained in the cervix, so it doesn't necessarily spread. So you can normally go in, cut it out, and it's fine. So my dad was like, look, she's got an operation in a few weeks. Don't come back. It's fine at the moment. And we'll just kind of play it by ear. So all was good. I mean, she had the operation. She had it cut out. My mum is very holistic, as you'll know, and for her, having kind of chemo was a last resort. The doctors suggested that she should have chemo straight after the operation, just to make sure that any kind of cancer cells weren't left in her lymph nodes or anything like that. But they thought they'd done a great job and it was all cleaned out and they had everything. So doctors were kind of like, it's kind of up to you if you want to have it or not. So my mum went against that. She wanted to do everything naturally. So we actually, we had some cannabis oil sourced from California to help with any kind of pain. And obviously there's loads of research about kind of cannabis oil helping with cancer, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but my mum wanted to try it. My partner and we'd planned to come back for 2 weeks in June, and my mum was fine. Just before we actually flew, my dad then gave me the call to say that the cancer had come back. So we were actually already coming back, which was good. So we didn't have to plan anything. We were flying back. We actually had a couple of trips booked to Spain for a weekend, and on the way back we were meant to go to New York for the weekend, because you obviously try and get a trip in when you go back to the UK, because it takes up a lot of your time. So we'd obviously had a few things planned already, and obviously then we got the news that the cancer had come back. So again, we're like, shit, I mean, if this has come back, then this is serious. And apparently it doubled in size as well, so it just grown exponentially.
So or was it somewhere else? Did it spread somewhere?
It come back in a cervix, but it spread to her intestines. So as we arrived to see my mum for the first time in probably about a year or so, she'd lost a lot of weight because she was actually struggling to eat, because it was really affecting her stomach.
Mm.
So that was really kind of hard to see. She was in so much pain, and she was coming to terms with the fact that chemo is something that she should do. And the doctors suggested that she had another operation to take it out of her intestines. So that was booked in probably a week before we'd actually planned to go to Spain for a couple of days. Now, it was obviously touch and go on whether we were even going to go or not, because obviously depending on how my mum was. So my mum went in for the operation. She came out. She was fine. We spent a few days with her, and she was like, just go to Spain, just take your mind off it, have a couple of days to yourself. And I just remember being over in Spain, and my dad calling me at like 11 in the morning. I was like, my dad's calling me. Why is my dad calling me? He would never call me when I'm on a holiday for no reason. And he was just in tears again and just said, look, your mum's just had a stroke. So like my world just crashed down there. And me and Zara just booked the first flight back on bloody Ryanair. Worst flight of my life. I remember being on there and just fully packed. The plane was delayed. We were actually on the runway for like 3 hours. They actually had no water on the plane for some reason. And there was a pregnant woman on there that needed water, and there's arguments going on, and the plane nearly didn't take off. And I just remember just thinking, I just need to get home. I just need to get home to see my mum. And got back and went straight to the hospital, and my mum had a stroke the night before, and it completely paralyzed all of her left side. And so her arm, her left leg, left side of the face, and she couldn't talk. So the doctors were like, your mum's got a week to live. So we were like, I was just kind of sat there with her thinking, shit, this is it. And I mean, the worst thing about it all is my mum had been kind of so against kind of chemo, but she'd actually kind of come to terms with it and said, look, I'm gonna do it. But because of this stroke, the doctors were like, she's just too weak. We couldn't do anything for her. We can't even try and attack the cancer again. So she's so frail right now that we reckon she's probably only got a week to live. So, I mean, that's just like fucking blew my mind. It's like I couldn't even really accept it. And it's weird because I didn't really cry. I was just in such shock. It's like I just didn't know how to even really deal with it. And obviously my sister and my dad, I'd never seen my dad really cry properly, and he was like distraught. But I mean, my mum slightly improved in that first week. So the kind of hospital was like, look, if you wanted to have her last days, kind of take her home and just have her there. Or no, in fact, actually, I think she went to the hospice. Hospice first. And yeah, she was doing all right. She obviously couldn't talk. We couldn't communicate with her. So she was getting frustrated, and we'd ask her a question, but we could see that she understood us, but she couldn't compute it to a response. So she was basically just stuck in her mind. She's always said, like, if something happens to me, take me to Switzerland and give me the chop. Like, I just know for her that would have been the worst thing possible to happen to her. A stroke where, as a creative person, wasn't able to express herself or paint or do anything. So for us, it was just like so hard to see it like that. And in a way, we're thinking, like, it'd be better if she was gone, kind of thing. I mean, I know she wouldn't want to be here now. But she stayed quite constant. She got a bit stronger, and her responses got a bit better, but she still couldn't really understand us. So, I mean, she lived for another 6 months. So I basically stayed in Shrewsbury. Zara obviously had the business in Sydney, so she had to go back within 2 weeks. So I spent 6 months pretty much by my mum's side, while she was doing, and without my wife as well, because she had to be in Australia, otherwise the business would have gone under. So for me, it was a very weird situation where I wasn't focused on Zara. I was focused heavily on my mum and how she was doing. And I think even though we kept strong, myself and Zara, I think by the end of it really kind of showed us that we could actually live apart. So, but again, I didn't think about that at all until really my mum passed away, and we managed to get her home for probably 3 or 4 months. And then I actually booked a flight back to Australia because I hadn't seen Zara for 4 months. I don't know if you remember, but I actually flew back because my mum was quite stable at the time. And I thought, right, I'll go back for 2 weeks and I'll go and see Zara and I'll come back and make sure mum's all right. But literally within 3 days of landing, my dad called me up and said, your mum's deteriorated. She's probably got 24 hours to 48 hours to live. So I just booked a flight, flew straight back again. And just went straight to the hospice, sat next to her, slept next to her every single night. I had done previous, like leading up to that, for 6 months. And 3 days later, I remember sleeping next to her and waking up at like 3 a.m. and then just hearing my mum's breath just get slower and slower. And then I just knew at that point, I had a feeling that day that something was going to happen because she deteriorated quite a lot. And then and it was just me there. My dad actually decided to stay back at the house. And I just kind of watched her take a last breath by myself next to her, like 3 a.m. on 29th of November. And just remember ringing my dad and just bursting into tears pretty much for the first time, really. And they came over and it was just a really, really sad day because my mum was just such a good person. And the hardest thing actually is because she really felt kind of hard done by it all, because she was a good person. She did everything right. She felt like she'd been kind of cheated. So leading up during the actual cancer part, she was quite bitter about things, which was quite hard because she just thought it was just so unfair that she had cancer. And that she was probably going to die earlier than she should have done. So that was all quite difficult. But I mean, as you know, when you lose someone like that, it just kind of changes your perception on life and things and what's important, and just realigns. You don't get annoyed about stupid little things you got annoyed about before, and I definitely think a lot straighter, and I'm a lot more, I don't know, responsible, I suppose, in the way that I live my life. I think that has changed a lot of things, and definitely just to see your mum take your last breath is a thing that I'll never ever forget. Like, I mean, it haunts me to my day, but I'm so glad I was there. Like, I would have been gutted if I hadn't been there. So, but yeah, I mean, you live on. I mean, that's the kind of first heartbreak that I've kind of had in my life.
Yeah, because I mean,
loss. I mean, big loss.
I lost my mum when I was 12 years old, as we've spoken about, but I wasn't physically there, and it was very much a bolt from the blue. It was like, well, unexpected, and just like 1 minute she was alive, and the next minute she was gone. But I wasn't physically. I wasn't physically there. I was about 15 miles away at the time, and I just can't imagine it, like what it would be like to actually be there when she actually passed away. But
weird thing, definitely a weird thing.
I mean, because we had it with Jez's dad who passed away with multiple myeloma. You know, a year ago in November, and we were physically, you know, in the room, and we saw him take his last breath, and it's just like a very, you know, as you know, it's a super dramatic, intense experience. And on one hand, and Jez sort of, it haunts her as well, and she's harrowed by it. But I try and remind her that, like, if it was her dad, from a dad's position, and if you do leave your body and float above your body, whatever, to see all your family that you love there round about you would be a nice thing. And I'm sure that's what he would have wanted, you know, to for everyone to be in the room. But it doesn't make it any easier for you, because you're the one who has to have that memory going round and round and round in your head.
No, completely right. I mean, I'd been back for 6 months, and lucky enough, I mean, the great thing is my sister had her first child, so we had Mila kind of running around from the age of 3 months to 9 months that I was there. And you can't help, I mean, a baby just takes your mind off things, and just a happy little creature was just massive for all of us, and huge for my mum as well during the time. So massively kind of thankful for that. And I'll always, I mean, it was actually a great time for me to actually spend time with a family that I hadn't done for so long. So some kind of real positives that kind of came out of that 6 months, but it was, very difficult. I mean, and ultimately after that, I mean, I had to kind of resume my life back in Australia. My life was there. So the end of that year in December, I flew back. Zara had actually come back to the UK for the funeral, and then we kind of flew back to Oz together. And it was back into work with the wife's business. And I mean, I knew there was something wrong at the time. Didn't really want to face it. But like three months later in March, we both decided to go our separate ways. And it was very amicable. It was quite upsetting, because obviously we'd been together for 11 years. And we were so dependent on each other, and we'd spent so much time, so much history. But we just kind of knew somewhere that just wasn't right. I think we both wanted different things, and we'd probably kind of masked that for quite a long time. So we decided to separate in end of March, beginning of kind of April. And again, another huge kind of shock in my life that I never really saw coming. And it was probably hugely delayed, because obviously with my mum being ill and everything. So that was a huge thing for me. So I'm there, we were separated from my wife, and we both moved to Australia together, as I've been talking about. So we had the same circle of friends. I was thinking, I don't want to every weekend. I mean, this is going to be very, very difficult. So I'm like thinking, what the hell do I do with my life? So I thought, right, I'll go back to the UK again, see some family, spend a bit of time, and kind of make my next steps. I knew I wanted to be in Oz. However, when I went back, and it was in May time, May, June, May, and there was a couple of bank holiday weekends in Manchester, and I went up to see all my friends and stuff, and everyone was out in the beer gardens, and sun was out. I was still thinking, oh, Manchester, absolutely love it. And for a second, I was thinking maybe I'll stay in England. And I don't know what I was thinking, but one of my best mates and then walked up to me and said, "Mate, this isn't real. I haven't seen these lads for a year. You just come at the right weekend."
Yeah.
So again, that threw me. I was thinking, shit, I can't go back to Sydney. Do I move to Melbourne? Melbourne's an option. I had one friend there, Clarky, who had already said to me, "Look, I've got a spare room. Just come and move to Melbourne." And I was kind of contemplating it. And I mean, I ended up staying in England for 5 weeks or so. And obviously during that time, you got on the blower and gave me a call and said, "Come and meet me." And I mean, we've talked about this on your podcast, about how you had the whole spiel behind you, ready to kind of give me the pitch on Digitalent. So you'd set Digitalent up already, because so this is a whole other story about obviously you leaving Australia because of Jez's father being unwell with cancer, so you returned to the UK, and at the same time set up Digitalent in preparation.
Yeah, so and then we at the time when you came to visit us, we were living with Jez's mum and dad. Me, Jez, Rosie, our little girl, who was 2 at the time, and our cat Baggins, and we were back, in the UK and living at the in-laws. So I knew that you were in Manchester, but obviously family situation, I wasn't going to be able to join you for like a boozy night of old like we used to have. So I was like saying, if you can come over to Southport, we'll come over and we can have like maybe lunch and do it respectable. And I remember you saying, yeah, I'll come over. And I remember you told me at the time, I can't remember how you told me. You told me that you'd split up with Zara. And I remember being unbelievably shocked at the time, because I was like, I didn't know, obviously, how would I know, like any of the, the situation with the cracks in the relationship, or like, you go in your separate ways and, all that sort of stuff. Because to everyone else externally, it's like you think of you and you think of, it's like Dillan and Zara and Dillan. It's just like, you've been together for such a long time. It's all you kind of knew. And I remember being super shocked. And then I remember thinking, like, what's he going to do now? Because at the time we were obviously working with her, and business with Digitalent at the time was probably 8 months old at the time, 9 months old.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really gotten it up and running properly yet. I'd only had a couple of clients, and, I was literally starting from scratch. But I'd gotten a little bit of traction, but there was a lot of potential there. And I remember literally having almost like my speech ready for you. And I said to the missus, we're going to go to the pub round the corner for a pub lunch on like a whatever day it was, like a Monday or like a Tuesday or whatever, when you came to visit me. And I remember having a spiel going around my head, and I'm like, how am I going to pitch into it? I don't want to come across too serious. And I was dead conscious of like, how to come across and stuff. But obviously at that time in your life, the context of that moment, it was unrealistic for me to think that I was going to you were going to go, oh yeah, totally, going into business and stuff. Because at the time you had just, agreed, that you were going to split up with your wife.
I was at another crossroads in my life, and with no idea what to do career-wise or where to even live. And
you'd had a couple of not offers, but you'd had a couple of conversations with some exciting companies like Spotify and Monster Energy Drink,
and a few
and all that sort of stuff. And I remember thinking, well, like, I remember just being totally dejected after, because you were like, I said to you, but why don't you come on board and what you do the Australian side of our business and do Digitalent? And you were like, yeah. And that was your kind of like reaction. You were like, I don't know, mate, and I don't know. And you sort of kind of like shrugged it off a little bit. And I thought, oh, fuck, he's not going to.
It's because at the time, recruitment was the furthest from my mind.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And I hadn't even contemplated it again. And
I know, yeah.
And
I said to Jez, I was like, he's not going to go for it. And she was like, oh my God, he's such a good recruiter. He's brilliant at the job. He really enjoys it. You two be or something. And I'm like, I know, but he's just not like, it was like I'd like returned home empty-handed and I had to explain myself to my wife, basically. I was like, so I like trudged in, and he was just sort of like, oh, she couldn't believe it either. Yeah. And then, and then that funny thing happened with the client where I had to get you to attend a meeting.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, a few days later, I pick up a phone call from you, all panicked. Then, Dill, you need to do a huge favor for me. I'm like, what? Because I need you to go for a meeting for me in Sydney. I'm like,
yeah.
What are you talking about?
So, yeah. You've
been speaking to one of your clients that had a load of work in Sydney.
A load of Sydney.
Panicked.
I panicked at the end of the call when she asked me if it was just me in the business, and I sort of like tried to bullshit my way through it and say no, it's because I mean at the time it wasn't so much a lie at the time because you hadn't officially really said no.
No. No,
you just sort of said, give it some thought or whatever. But at the time, I was just, my business, I've got a business partner, Dylan. He's based in Sydney, and she was like, "Oh, excellent! Would love to meet him." And then I was like, "Oh,
shit!"
So I had to ring you up and sort of explain things. But I knew that you'd obviously do it, and that you'd.
Yeah, I mean, I was laughing. Yeah, I was like, of course I'll do it.
Yeah,
but then you were like, you need to change your LinkedIn because they're going to check your LinkedIn, and you need to show that you're working at Digitalent.
And this is one of these things I was talking about you can't connect the dots looking forward type thing, but it's that series of events like you splitting up with your wife and us meeting up for lunch and then me talking to that client and saying you were in business, and then she wanted to meet you. And I'm like, oh my God. And then me having to explain it. And then you actually going to the meeting and obviously changing your LinkedIn profile. So look, those like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 things in a row.
Yeah.
If they hadn't happened in that exact way and at that exact time, at that exact moment, things would have been completely different.
Different. I mean, I changed my LinkedIn, and I've told you this. I mean, I obviously hadn't been on LinkedIn for 2 years or so. And within the space of 24 hours, I had a load of old clients and candidates like message me saying, "Oh, great to see you back in the game. We need to catch up for a coffee." And honestly, I mean, I had so many. I was just thinking, shit, right? I'm back in.
Yeah,
I mean, I knew at that point. I mean, that was actually a huge drive for me, and just hearing all the old people that I dealt with in the past and had built relationships with, and just have that positive kind of response to it all. I mean, hugely, that was a huge motivation for me, and actually, for the first time, made me think, shit, we could actually do this. There was still obviously the issue of where I was going to be, so I decided. I thought, right, I'm going to go to Melbourne, and my friend Stephen Clarkey had a spare room, which I moved into. But I mean, I moved to a market, starting a new business, obviously, Digitalent in Australia. Moving to a new market where I had no presence whatsoever.
Yeah,
I'd never recruited.
I thought initially you were going to live in Melbourne but recruit for Sydney because that's where all of the contacts.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, and that was my idea behind it all. 100%, because I still had those contacts in Sydney, which I obviously reconnected with.
So did I.
Yeah. And I mean, it did work out like that. I mean, obviously, I got a load of business back from Sydney, but because I was in Melbourne, I mean, Clarkey, who I live with, he was head of production at an agency called Versa, literally just around the corner from where we were. And then he's like, "Mate, we've got a couple of spare desks in the office. Why don't you just come and hot desk in the office and just start your business from there?" And yeah, I mean, we'll sort out some kind of payment further down the line if you want to stay on, kind of thing. But just give it a go and see what you can do. So, like, the second week I'm in Melbourne, I'm going in on a Monday morning into this new office with Clarkey in this agency right in the middle of Cremorne in Melbourne, like the kind of the hub of where all the agencies are. And the MD comes up to me and introduced me, and we really got on. And she gave me a table and. And the second day, she taps on my shoulder and says, "I need a UX designer." I was like, "Right, I can do that for you." And there was probably 3 or 4 other roles that they needed filling during that time. I ended up filling 3 of them in the space of 2 weeks, just short-term contracts. So it's quite a quick turnaround. But a huge kind of confidence boost for me, and obviously allowed me to build a great relationship with the guys at Versa, and I really actually got to know them as people and as a business, and because I was sat with them all day, and the culture and exactly the type of people they recruit for or want. So it became quite an easy job in our relationship to find them the right talent. And I think from the start, and that gave us a kind of great platform to build a business around, is really kind of being present with our clients and being very hands-on and high touch.
Yeah,
and being in their offices, and building relationships, and like working with a culture of the people that we work with, and being able to kind of service them properly, which we've never really been able to do previously in our recruitment careers. And I think we've learned so much from what we used to do and what we shouldn't do in recruitment.
Yeah.
And so much clearer now on how we really should run a business. And I mean, I was lucky. I mean, I fell on my feet. I was hot desking in an agency that gave me some work, and in turn, the MD introduced me to other agencies in the area. And it was a kind of word of mouth thing from there. And I built that kind of Melbourne practice in that first year quite successfully, while trying to manage, obviously Sydney. So it's a bit of, we were just everywhere, weren't we, that first year? I mean, we didn't really know what we were doing. We were learning on the go. We didn't have many processes in place, systems in place. So it was all a bit of a scramble. But it was just the two of us, so we just went with the flow.
We couldn't even get a business bank account, remember, because I was...
because you weren't in the country.
Because I wasn't in the country, and they wouldn't give us even though I was already a CBA customer and I'd had a previous business bank account and all the rest of it, there's some law rule that meant that you needed to go physically into a branch to open a bank account. Because we were both down as sort of directors of Digitalent in Australia, they needed us both there to open this business bank account. So at one point I was actually trying to speak to Jez to say, I actually need to go to Australia to open a bank account.
You were quite happy about that, weren't you? But...
She was like, nah, we've got a 2-year-old.
I mean, it was going to have to come to that. It was going to have to come to that at one point. It hadn't been for transfer-wise. We would have probably struggled there.
Definitely, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was obviously a great year, and moving to Melbourne is actually the kind of the best thing that I've ever done. I mean, it's a great city. It was a great experience. I met some great friends. I met my partner, who I'm with now, Millie. She's a Kiwi. We hit it off pretty much straight away. Are still together now, happy. And I mean, obviously, so much has happened since then. I mean, we've grown the business. The pandemic's hit. I mean, obviously, the beginning of last year was quite a big year for us because we just brought on Alex just the year before, who was flying, and we just then brought on Amy and Tom just in January, wasn't it? End of Jan.
Within a week of it.
So for us, we're like, this is our year. We've got things in place here. The processes are still shoddy here and there, but we have things in place to kind of bring on new people and build a business.
Yeah.
And the pandemic hit, and a number of months we were like, shit, how are we going to get through this? And in our minds, we were like, we need to keep our staff, weren't we? I remember that being one huge focus for us. It's like, we can't let anyone go. We need to kind of weather this storm and get through the end. And there was a few touch and go moments, wasn't there? I mean, Virgin Airline, being one of our biggest clients, going to administration.
Airlines,
was a heart-stopping moment for us, and it could have been a business killer.
Could have been, yeah, because you had a load of contractors who were sort of due payment and time.
A lot of unpaid
invoices and all that sort of stuff. It was that was a sleepless nights for a few weeks for sure. I remember just lying in bed staring at the ceiling most nights, just because I couldn't tell Jez because she's a worrier, and I didn't know what was happening with her. And I just remember thinking, oh my God. But it all thankfully all kind of worked out in the end with that. But no, we've definitely been on a journey with the business, but it's great. What we've built now is we're obviously a small bit business in terms of numbers. We had a new starter with us yesterday, Zara, who's joined us as an operations manager. And she's going to be looking after all those processes that you mentioned and helping us kind of keep the wheels and the business in motion behind the scenes, and let us focus on growing the business. But we've always felt that we've got the right people on the bus, so to speak. And I just think that the journey that we've been on personally, obviously together, and through sort of meeting in Manchester and then, joining forces in Sydney again, and then obviously the whole ins and outs of what's happened in between, I just think adds to the whole thing, because it's because there's that trust there, really. Because think about it, we're a business of like sub 10 full-time staff as a recruitment agency, and we're building a presence in the UK and in Australia simultaneously.
And fully distributed, so remote.
Fully distributed, where everyone working from home, and obviously we had a completely remote working distributed team before COVID hit, and a lot of people sort of turned their nose up at it and scoffed at it, especially in the recruitment industry, where you're sort of, why haven't you got a big swanky office type thing, and that, they sort of, that played itself out, didn't it? So, but I just think that the way that we're doing things is quite, it's very unique. There's not that many businesses, sub 10 recruitment, agencies who are a genuine global company and who've got a presence on the other side of the, 11,500 miles from each other, basically. But the fact that we're doing it as sort of like best friends who have been through a lot, together and stuff, I think's awesome, because there's that implicit trust there. You can trust me, and I know that I can trust you, and
you need to when you're so far away from each other. I mean, without that trust, we wouldn't be here now, and our team wouldn't be here now. And we've made sure we've employed people that have that same kind of value and trust as we do, and that's why it's worked. It wouldn't work without it. We'd get run into the ground.
Definitely.
And that flexibility and that remote working. I'm if those of you don't know, I'm in New Zealand now. Most of you will. My partner's Kiwi, and obviously the pandemic kind of hit her quite hard, the TV and film industry. So nothing's happened since, really, in Australia since March. So we were lucky enough to be able to escape Melbourne during the kind of peak lockdown period and get ourselves over to Christchurch. And with it only being 2 hours difference, kind of flexibility to work full-time remotely in no difference. And so, we're very, very lucky in that sense. And big year to come this year, 2021. Here we are. I can't believe,
unbelievable,
we're here. Really. I
know, and it's we've just started our tier 5 lockdown in the UK as of this morning, or like midnight last night. So already 2021 is a sort of like same shit, different toilet type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case.
Continuing on to the next this year, but what a story, mate! What a story! I've really enjoyed talking to you about that. It's been super interesting.
Like I said, it's stuff that I've not thought about for so long. So for me, just to go through it, I've actually really enjoyed it, and it's great to kind of to look back and see what's the decisions you've made that have taken you to where you are. I think that's the whole point of this podcast. We've really wanted to speak to people and really dig deep into their lives and decisions they've made to get them to where they are. And I don't think you really get enough of that raw kind of content. And a lot of people, I've never done this before. I've never actually kind of displayed this much information about my life. And I think a lot of people probably feel quite uncomfortable about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that people want to hear. It's a very interesting thing to learn someone's backstory.
It's that human story, and that's why we call them humans of tech and humans of creative, because we genuinely don't see that human story of like how you came to be the person that you are, and the things that have happened to you that have shaped your life, and the decision making, and how you ended up in this scenario. So it felt only right that me and Dylan share our story. And like I said, it's been a very rewarding and at times uncomfortable situation, having to talk about quite difficult things. Like both of us obviously have lost parents, and one of our parents and difficult things like that. And it's been the thought of actually publishing this for other people to sort of like listen in and form an opinion on it and everything. It's never up until I spoke to you about my story. I had only spoken to, well, my dad obviously knew it, my brothers knew it, and my partner Jez knew it, but nobody else. Everyone knew kind of like little tidbits and stuff, but never in that sort of amount of detail. So I'm hoping that whoever is listening, and whoever is interested in coming on the podcast, if you're, in tech or creative and you want to, share your story, or someone that has an interest in human story and life story, that they'd want to come on and be as open and honest and transparent, really, and hoping that everyone who listens to it has gotten some value from listening to the story, because ultimately that's what we've tried to do, is just sort of tell the story as true as possible. So.
Yeah, definitely. It's been enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think we'll wrap it up there, shall we?
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's me. We'll do another one in 10, 15 years' time.
We'll see 10 and 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening.
Thank you very much for listening, everyone.